So, but these things would say all of this is. I think that all right, these guys, I think it's no, understandable, and I just so on my website.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this school board meeting to order dated September 15th, 2025. We have no written comments or public speakers for us this evening, so going right to the approval of minutes. I move to approve the minutes from the operations work group meeting dated August 11th, 2025. Board member Lee, your advisory vote.
Aye. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, we have a full agenda, so I will turn it over to Superintendent Conlon.
Thank you, Chair Castro, members of the board, community, staff. Tonight, we really have two kind of large sections for me. The first will be Senior Executive Director of Building Services, Scott Sheehan. Will take us through a transportation update and then our referendum work. And then we'll turn it back over to Bob Sullivan, who will take us through some of our budget work to date, discuss some budget amendments with you. Before I turn it over to Scott, I just want to say Vanessa is with us, our assistant transportation, and I can't say enough about the work she and her department in partnership with the student. You'll hear from them as well. This has been a really wonderful start to the school year, and I think all of us are excited to hear why, because I think it's been some really intentional efforts that work hard in strengthening this partnership. So with that, I'll turn it over to Scott to get us started tonight.
All right, thank you, Dr. Gothard and Board of Education. We got some exciting updates for transportation coming forward. As Dr. Gothard mentioned, we worked really hard as a service organization with all of our students opportunity, ensure they can get to school and have the right transportation means for our parents to track and make sure that their students feel safe and supported in our district. Vanessa's been with us back with us now for almost a year-ish with prior experience, and brought it from our friends with to share with us an exciting update where we are. Kind of talk about where we're going and rebuilding what we have as a great educational system and transportation system in our district with great expectations. So with that, Vanessa.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, everybody. Again, my name is Vanessa Cruz, Assistant Director of Transportation and Logistics. I have with me here Alyssa Matuzowitz, who is the Area General Manager of First Student. We have Mary Lou Falk over here, and she's the Customer Success Manager for the Central Region. And we have Heidi Cook, who's the Madison Location Manager. So going into the next slide there, I just want to talk about just where we're at today. Okay, so it shows what we had last year. At the end of last year, we had 171 routes that were running in the AM and the PM. And this year we have 176, which has added a few more parents, which are more drivers. And so, we didn't have any significant schedule changes with that. The only thing we did adjust was the drop time for middle schools by 5 minutes. And so just that drop time change by 5 minutes added some routes to the system. We're transporting about 8,500 students, including 4K, so 418 4K students. Some of those are individual routes, some of those are incorporated into our overall route structure. We have 66 CDL drivers, plus the 4 office staff and First Student office that have their licenses and that can help cover. And then they have 4 charter only drivers. Right now we have 19 bus attendants, 21. Oh, we have more. So since we prepared these slides the other day, so we're constantly working on that, right? Recruiting bus attendants is continually an issue. I did some work over the summer with some of the neighborhood associations that we have in the area, and I met with the directors of those organizations and talked about how they can partner with us. Those are groups and organizations and people that have relationships with students that we're transporting. And a lot of them they're younger, they have more flexible schedules, and they want to work with kids. And so by giving them that opportunity, it kind of tacks on to their day, some extra experience, and it supports our students and the community as a whole. So, and then in specialized, we have 415 routes that transport 611 students. We have 105 rides for 133 TEP students this year. And then for after school, We do have 13 middle school routes altogether. Some of them are progressively, they're starting over this month based on when their program starts. And then we have the 7 elementary school routes running. And then I wanted to give Heidi an opportunity here to talk about on the next slide, just the preparation that goes into getting things ready. You know, our routing team, we do all the routing. But Heidi and her team, they're helping with pairings, making sure things work, and doing, you know, different runs. So I wanted her to talk about the work that she does.
Thank you for having us, everybody. So this year we had a kickoff meeting. Our kickoff meeting, we have one every year, preparation for return. It was all about safety, bus behavior, what drivers should be doing in emergencies, how drivers can best handle any behavior issues, parent conflicts, so forth. I think it was a really good meeting. The content I was really happy with. We stress communication, radio communication at all times. They communicate with us, we keep district notified of everything as it happens. This year was the earliest we've ever been able to do routes. We got routes the day after our kickoff. We handed out routes to drivers so they could start dry running on Friday the 14th. So the more preparation time they have, the more we can tweak the times, get the timing down right. This is the second year we did mock day. So we run the day as if it's a real school day. We run AM and PM routes at true route time. So that gives us a true understanding of how we're gonna time them. You know, a lot of drivers do dry runs throughout the day. But you know, the traffic is different at 10 AM versus route time at 7 or 7, whatever it is. So I think that's really helped, like last year and this year, to be as successful starts as we have had. And the dry runs, we encourage drivers to do as many dry runs as necessary to be comfortable and safe. You know, the more comfortable they are, the safer they are. So that was the big thing we've really promoted the last couple of years. But mock day, I think, has just been a wonderful aid.
And I just want to call out the fact that, number one, it was Heidi's idea to have a mock day. Last year was the first year we did it. And it's, you know, they don't charge us for it. So that's something they're paying their drivers for full days of work. And so it is an expense on their part. And that just shows their commitment to help make sure that things are smooth that first day. Families are getting used to the schedule. It maybe is a new bus, they're going to a new school. So there's always people making adjustments. So if our drivers are as secure as they can be that first day, that just helps families feel more secure, the students feel more secure. And it takes out those variables of driver error.
And that's another thing I'd like to add that Vanessa brought it up. We try to keep the same drive team, same routes from year to year, because I think that helps success and building those relationships too. So we try to be as consistent year to year as we can.
Okay, on the next slide, I just want to highlight, again, with those preparations. So First Student provided at no cost buses for drivers at welcome back events at 16 elementary schools. So aside from mock day, we put it out there. I sent an email and a Google form to all the elementary principals and said, if you would like to have a bus at your welcome back event to help younger students get to see what it's like to be inside the bus, you know, in many, we're all of those actual drivers for those schools or anyway, yeah. So she tries to do that. Sometimes maybe scheduling wouldn't allow a driver to be there in the evening, but this year it was able to be it was the driver that was already scheduled for that school. And then there are further bus assemblies that are scheduled over the next few weeks. There's been a couple already, I think. And then some more going on throughout the next month.
And drivers have requested one school did an ice cream social and then spread the word. So other drivers are requesting ice cream socials as well. So.
Who doesn't like ice cream?
Right.
Okay, so next slide, and I'm gonna give Mary Lou an opportunity to talk about.
Yeah, so we're excited to expand our partnership with the district to integrate PBIS into school transportation. And I have to say that this is something that kind of evolved last year. We had done first serves training, which was education for our drivers. We continue to reinforce that at our different safety meetings, but about, I don't know, the end of last year, right, Vanessa?
Mm-hmm.
Vanessa was really the one that helped move this forward for us as far as the district and gathering the right administration within the different schools, along with Heidi for the location, and then our very experienced First Serves retired administrator, school administrator who brings a lot of experience to this area. We formed a committee sometime last year, and we continued our discussions around developing universal language across all of the buses. We felt that this program would help to create a safer, more positive school bus experience by reinforcing consistent behavior expectations for students throughout their day. And we developed this document, which you're seeing the one in English, but we also created it in Spanish and in Hmong. These documents will be on the bus. We did some training for our drivers during our back to school meeting. Our person that manages the First Serves and Student Services portion for Madison, Marta Scott, came to the meeting, and she did the training, the extensive training with the drivers during that meeting to get them thinking about these types of things for the bus to encourage, positive behavior on the bus. We want to increase consistency, encourage positive behaviors. We want to foster a positive climate on the bus. We want our drivers to work to build relationships with the students, because we certainly realize that we're an important part of the school day and we set the tone for that day for these students. So this is something that will be a work in progress. Our team is going to continue to reinforce this. They're going to be coached to make sure that we're following these things on the bus and to reinforce those positive behaviors on the bus. And we also want to make sure with our First Acts program, which tracks behavior on the bus, where our drivers can, put things in about student behavior. We want our drivers to also notice those students that are doing positive things on the bus. We really believe that that sends a good message to reinforce those positive things too, and to really be able to build those relationships with the students on the bus.
Thank you, Mary Lou. And so, the bus behavior committee is comprised of several principals and Lily Gardner, who is over progressive discipline. So we all came together and we worked on what language schools are using, because everyone has their own PBIS language that they have. And so we were told that we could come up with our own language that is specifically for the bus. If we had universal language in every school, we would have adapted that to the bus. But because we did not, we came up with these. And they were middle school assistant principals, and there was mostly elementary principals that helped with this work.
And we had some really good discussions, really, with all of those folks. They were really productive. And again, I think we came up with some good verbiage that can be used on the bus and reinforced with the students.
Yep, and so this document is what's posted on the bus, but there is a teacher facing,
Right.
adult facing one that has
Right.
some more bullet points below just for teaching,
Right.
for school staff to use, and those have been sent out to school. Okay, so next slide. Thank you. So all yellow bus and specialized routes are now tracking. Even students that use our alternative carriers are also tracking. And in the first few parent app, we have close to 2,000 parent guardian users for that. So for the next slide, and I am going to ask Melissa.
Yep, right here.
Oh, there you
Sorry.
are. There you go.
Good evening, everyone. So looking ahead, this year, this summer, we've spent a lot of time recruiting. We had over 40 applications this summer, and of course, all 40 don't make the cut. We have to do MPRs. We have to do faculty pre-employment trainings of multiple kinds, because we want the safest drivers for your students. We are providing the best training possible to have the safest drivers for everybody as well. And when we do have great training, it creates a good environment for all of our employees to work in, which does help in our retention efforts as well. This year, we are also doing everything we can to accommodate the growth. So MMSD is a growing community. Just speaking with Vanessa and Scott, we are looking in the next 5 years, I think, several thousand students. I don't have the numbers, so don't quote me. So we're doing everything that we can to accommodate the growth. We just ordered another 3 wheelchair buses for your specialized transportation needs. So those are going into production and they ready within the next 6 to 9 months. It does take some time for them to be built. And weekly we are communicating with the transportation department in order to communicate any things that come up, what we're doing, things that we're active in the community, and really just getting on a aligned with how our week is going to go. Sustainability. So we're very, very excited to be entering the electrification of Madison. We are currently contracting with our design and building contractors for the infrastructure of what it's going to look like on site for charging electric buses. We're completing drawings for utility approval for permitting. So we're expecting that to be done within the next 90 days. Installing our Westinghouse fast chargers that will be energized by the new utility provided transformer in the next 6 months. And we are going to be putting 5 EV buses on the road by fall of 2026. So we're very excited to be able to be part of this. I know that Madison has a big emphasis on sustainability, and we are very happy to be contributing to that.
So then just to give you an update too on Metro service, we had a great start to the fall semester. They have 31 supplemental school routes that they're running for us. 5,046 Metro passes have been given to students. There's a new general manager that's starting October 13th, Amy Acton. And then we have contract talks coming up with them in October. And then with the summer, they had 2,400 students that took advantage of the passes for 80,000 rides.
All right, board member Vandermeer, I see your hand.
Yes, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Appreciate especially the tracking on the disability buses so that special needs parents can see where their students are at. I think that's huge. Question I just have a few questions. You said all languages. Is there a way that for those students who are deaf, if they're on there, is there a communication system or someone who can do sign if need be, if they weren't able to understand it possibly?
For which part, Mickey?
For deaf hard of hearing.
But for, are you talking about the bus behavior or you mean in
Bus
general?
behavior, bus behavior and being able to discuss what happens on the bus.
So I could talk specifically with the schools that have the deaf and hard of hearing
Yes.
program, see how they're supporting those things. I know we've provided, like I said, the materials to the schools. And so I can check in with Henderson and Senate to see how they're able to implement those to make sure those students understand.
That's wonderful. Followed as well, but I'm not sure that would
Yep.
apply. Additionally, communication boards for those who are nonverbal on the specialized transit are always helpful. I don't know if we do that. Those are just little boards you can point to. They're not electronic. You just point to the letters in case someone needs to communicate. I don't know if we do those or not. That might be helpful suggestion.
Thank you.
And then my last couple questions are, have we thought of being able to switch to back to a two-tier system? Because I've heard quite a few parents of both elementary and middle school parents stating that 4:30 is all, especially in middle school, that 4:30 is a bit on the late side. Have we heard of anything on that? That's my last question.
Currently, we're working within the district, see what the confines and capacities are for next year. We're working on some plans and ideas of what may or may not be supported from the district from a transportation standpoint for our students. And then we're
Got it.
working to work with a survey with our staff is seeing what makes sense for changes, if there will be changes. Sometimes people take time to adapt. Some people like to change. So there'll be a survey coming out this fall, and the backside, we're working the transportation to understand what the capacity might be to ensure that we don't sign up or get something or get yourself into trouble for it. We're working on the capacity aspect and we'll have recommendations forward to the schooling side or curriculum side of what is feasible for that transportational change. So that's part of like the building capacity piece comes in, ensuring we have that flexibility to do that if it's so needed to.
And then I have one actual additional with that. Will the board be able to also see and take the survey?
Sure.
Thanks. That's all I got.
Okay. Board member Saravo, then board member Most Feltham.
Thank you, board member Castro. My questions were in regards to what just wasn't really clear, what does family communication and like feedback look like? Like, does it go through MMSD to first student? What does that portal look like? And is it different for families who have specialized transportation as opposed to the yellow buses?
Do you mean the tracking app for? I don't know what you mean by the feedback.
Well, if everything's housed through the app, then is that the case?
So, yeah, not everything is housed in the app. The app only shows the student's transportation assignment. So communication still goes to families as it always has. Schools communicate transportation assignments. For special ed students, the case manager is the one that communicates that to the family. Really, the only thing it is to make sure, okay, my student's coming home or the bus is outside or the bus is approaching, so I should come outside. The app shouldn't be used for anything more than that.
For feedback purposes, then what does that look like?
So for feedback, I know First Student has their own
Yeah.
first feedback
Right.
platform that goes directly to them.
Mhm.
And then we have Let's Talk or the community or families, parents can reach out directly to the transportation department with any questions or concerns that they have.
So when you say it goes to first students, they literally go,
Mhm.
like not our website at all, it goes to first student, not through MMSD.
That's one option, the
Right,
first
it
feedback
depends on what
piece.
the family chooses. Because some families will contact the transportation
Right,
office, some
right.
contact the schools, some contact us.
Okay.
It varies.
So like for specialized, if they needed to change that at all, they would be just going to their case manager at the school.
Correct.
It's
Yeah.
their job in order to do all the,
But they can also, so Laura Hypley is the special ed coordinator for elementary and middle school. She's available. If a family wants to call her directly and talk to her, they're welcome to do that. And Kara Hansen does the high school, the IIP and the vocational routes. So if any of those families wanted to talk directly to her, they can do that. But any changes that are processed have to go through the IEP and have to be put
Right.
into the system. So that's why it goes. Sure. If it's an actual change, just questions, or you want to talk about a situation, they can call any of them.
and that's available on the website.
Yep, on the transportation website, it has all the information ahead of time.
Thanks. Then I had one other question, because when Badger Bus was with the district, they kind of did a flyby. And it sounds very similar to the mock days, but I don't know if they did it at the exact times, because I can't remember, it's not spent some time. Do
But-
families get notified when they're doing that?
So with Badger, what we used to do, and I don't, that you can probably say why we stopped. When drivers are doing dry runs, they would leave notes. Let families know what their time were.
Yeah.
And that to be problematic because there were so many apartments and people were complaining that like a driver couldn't leave a note because we can't go into mailboxes, so we can't.
Yeah.
We couldn't communicate properly. And then it was like district releases that their times.
Mhm.
So that's why we stopped that a few years ago. They've always done dry runs and we always encouraged. Before we started the mock day, we would encourage drivers to do at least one of their mock mock run or one of their dry runs at route time to get that true reflection of how it was gonna go. But, you know, without tracking their GPS, you know, we didn't know for sure.
Yeah.
That's why when I thought of this mock day, everybody checks in, you
Like it's a
know,
normal
you
day.
run it just like a normal day, so that
Right.
we're sure everybody's
Right.
out there doing it at route time. But I think what you're referring to is where the drivers used to leave the
They didn't leave a note. I don't know if I was not part of it, if we were not part of it at that point in time. It was more so we could just pop outside and actually see the bus, and then I felt there was a chance for the bus driver to understand the needs a little bit more directly.
I don't remember that at all.
Okay,
I mean, it could have just
It
been
could've been a-
coincidence.
yeah.
It could have been with drivers
Mhm.
that happen, you know, if the families happen to see them, they would stop.
Yeah.
But
cause that
we
always.
never had
people on
anything planned. But that's where like the school assemblies are really useful, like we send the vehicles. So families can come and get comfortable with the vehicle, you know, ask the drivers any questions. But
When you do those, are you setting the yellow and the specialized one?
if schools want it, we offer it. Some schools have only wanted yellow and then some want the van and the yellow. Like we're going to Kennedy in a week.
Yep.
Tomorrow we're going to Lapham with both. So we've left it up to the schools. We provide whatever they want.
It's the only thing I would wanna like kind of, that I would be looking at is how, what does that turnover look like for those attendants? That, are we tracking that, or we able to see that more active?
I mean, we can, I don't know if you have specific turnover numbers, how many you've retained from year to year?
I mean, there's been a couple that we've had to term for reasons. But can't remember the last time an attendant quit because they just mad or, you know,
Right, I
happy.
know it drives.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But the
It's-
two that we just added on Friday, like are super eager. I'm really excited to see because their attitudes are amazing, you know, so I'm excited to see them. You know, like one of the slides alluded to, I think it was something Alyssa talked about, we want the best and we want
Right.
the safest. You know, I'd rather run tight and short than have somebody that not
It's
comfortable.
not a
with.
good fit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as a monitor or
Yeah.
driver. So we've really, the last 2 years, really been able to weed out, you know, the unsafe, you know, the ones that we're just not sure. We had a driver go through all the training, get his CDL, came to do, you know, to meet us and to get his routes. And says, you know, I don't even like a tree.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't want that, you know,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And be a driver, but we don't want that driver. You know, we want somebody that loves what they do
Yeah.
Yeah.
and safety is their main thing. So
And the kids.
again, I'd rather be selective than take anybody.
And
So,
the other thing, just like Alyssa was saying, that they're the same standards that they hold the drivers to with all those background checks and testing that are,
Right.
that's all done for monitors as well.
Right,
And so that,
first all,
yeah, and for
Yeah.
first out, so
Yeah.
it does limit the amount of people that are qualified.
right,
Just off the bat, so.
right.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you, board member Melissa Feltham.
Thanks. Congratulations on starting the year, like, seems like everything's rolling. Thank
Yeah.
you. I have 3 questions. One is really simple, which is 5 electric vehicles out of how many?
Best to have all together.
I know how many buses in our fleet. I don't have many yellows.
Ish is fine.
How many in your fleet?
Like 200. So the yellow buses probably 72.
Cool, that's estimates right. Next question is about staffing. And I see that you have 66 CDL drivers and 19 attendants, 4 charter only drivers and 4 office staff. How close is that to fully staffed, like how you want it to be?
I would like our sub pool, our standby pool to be higher.
Okay,
Just,
and that's comprised in that 66 number?
yeah, you know, I'd rather have drivers sitting in our break room on the clock doing nothing than to have to worry about a route running late or, you know, when we have accidents or even just a mere fender bender, we can have one route or one driver in a bus have to go off the bus and finish that tier. We have another one that can go do the second tier, if it's 3 tiers, to be on time, and then if that first driver doesn't get released, we're potentially looking at a third. So the more drivers we have, like just
What's
one
your- what's your
accident,
kind of like train number.
I would like 5 each on those. I'd like 5 spec and 6 reg, 6 yellow ideally.
So when I see 66 CDL drivers,
I'd like another 4.
okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Can you please tell me what's the starting wage for a driver who's coming into first student right now?
26
Great.
with no experience.
Awesome. And then my last question is about, we hear from families sometimes say, oh, I can't, we're not eligible for transportation, but my kid could walk 2 blocks to the route. I believe I recall a few years ago when we were trying to really get a handle on how many students are eligible for transportation, using transportation, we had some discussion of like, once we know what we need to know, then we can have a conversation about whether or not your child can walk the 2 blocks and get on the route. Can you tell me where we're at in that process of thinking about that?
I think that all goes in with what Scott was talking about with the capacity, because if we're talking about growing and adjusting schedules and making them tighter, that's gonna reduce our capacity. So we just, I think we have to get through that
Okay.
decision and where we wanna be. And then once we're in that and settled, we can talk about what does it look like for the different exceptions that could be out there.
Okay, and then to help me understand sort of like the scope of that conversation or that process, is that discussion about building capacity part of the building for the future conversation broadly, or is that a separate conversation?
I think it's hand in hand, right?
Okay.
We have a lot of community, like short distance, long, and we're evaluating, hey, what percentages maybe between 1.25 and 1.5? Like, there's a lot of changes that happen in Madison.
Okay.
So as we work also in that dimension of where alignment will be,
Mhm.
then how do we do capacity? Because our city is growing. And especially on the far west side, and we're getting longer drives in some locations, or traffic pattern changes, we have to accommodate for busing. And there's also potentially where we look at future builds is we put an elementary school in this particular area, then maybe do we give more capacity for moving things around? So it's not a really answer your question, but this dynamic is, I got something over here and I have to give this and I get a bunch over here. So we're trying to
Yep,
find that balance.
For sure.
In the next 3 years, I would say, because
Okay.
this city is growing so massively, so quickly, that we may have a decision and something's coming online in the spring.
Got
Some
it.
things on the west side, that's the housing showing up in the spring. So we've accommodated for that, but
So if I have like a 3rd grader, I shouldn't be hoping that my 3rd grader in December would know. I should be thinking maybe my 6th grader.
yeah.
Cool. Those are my questions. Congratulations again. Thanks, Chair.
Board Chair Nichols.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, congratulations on what sounds like a really positive start of the year. And just noting that it seems like things have moved to a much more proactive instead of reactive mode. So it's great to hear just the learning and the growth that's occurred. I only have one question, and it's related to Metro. So I know previously there had been some concerns from the city of Madison about how their buses can be used according to their federal guidelines. And I was just curious. Clearly, we have buses with them, which is awesome, but do we anticipate any challenges in the future around is it the Dodgers or what we're calling that? And if you could also include just any updates on how Capitol High, how that's working, what have we learned in the last year about bringing students all the way from the east and all the way from the west to the Hoyt Center?
My understanding is that the routes that are being run by Metro now are compliant.
Okay,
That the issue was more when we had the middle schooler and then we had these extra routes running that were not public. So
Okay.
everything we have now is, my understanding is public, yeah. I can find out. I have not heard anything about Cap High in this school year just now, so I can look into that and I can get you some.
Yeah, it's just a
Yeah.
curiosity, just because, that was one of the things we were looking at, you know, when
Yeah.
Capitol High moved to that more central location.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. My two questions are around the bus behavior. Committee, wondering who makes that up and the current techniques and strategies they're thinking about on addressing bus behavior. And specifically, if they thought about volunteers, student delegates or parent chaperones or paying staff to help out on the buses.
Sure. So that's a great question. The bus behavior committee came from some principals that I asked to be a part of it because we had some work to do with First Student to review their First Student Service program. Which is, and then that document that you saw is what was produced so far. The first meeting we had, I think it was like in June.
Yeah.
So some of the things that you're talking about are things that I've thought about would be great to incorporate going forward. I think the sky's the limit. I mean, we can do anything we want with the bus behavior committee. We can have students that have experienced behavior in a certain way from other students, you know, situations, have them share what they've experienced. We can have staff, anybody that would like to participate. I mean, they're welcome to share their information, send me an email. I'm happy to hear ideas and ways that we can be proactive about preventing unsafe situations on the bus, for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about what comes from their thoughts and.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further board member questions?
Yes.
Board member Vandermeulen?
I forgot to take my hand down, sorry.
Okay, all good. Okay, seeing no further questions, I'll pass it back to Scott for what I think is the building services and referenda update.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. We will dive into building services site first. We have a little bit of an update on a little bit of work this summer. And then we'll dive into a short version for referendum this month, as next month will be very heavy in referendum as we start detailed designs for phase one. So next slide. Just briefly, we talked about CTE expansion in our middle schools this past summer and the spring's vote to approve projects. So I'd like to share what our current change at Gillespie was. So we have two interns, Ingrid Larson, Kyle West from University of Wisconsin-Madison, who were interns this summer for project managers. They helped us transform this beautiful space at Gillespie from a previous girls' locker room into a beautiful CTE space that you see on the right with natural lighting to the north, cord reels, open industrial ceiling, brand new curriculum space, and floor that gives them capacity to have CTE space within Gillespie. And then the next slide is a conversion we had at Whitehorse, taking an old room, which was, I think, both a math space and converting it into CTE space for open seating, updated cabinetry cleaning, 3D printing, cord reels, and updated boards for them to perform this space in Whitehorse, which gives us the ability to have two more updated CTE spaces within our curriculum of our program. All right, next update, we'll skip a couple to referendum update. So next slide, please. That's one more. Slides are all messed up. Here we go. Master project slide. This got messed up on the conversion, but it's okay. We are currently in phase one, as we've talked about in the previous meeting. Now, effectively, as of last Monday, we are now in phase two as well. We have kicked off phase two at Cherokee Middle School last Monday, and we will continue activities with Tokyo Orchard Ridge. And now Senate Middle School is now coming up to phase two. So we have all of our new builds within the first two phases of the referendum. Meaning we have more work to do on the Senate side, bringing that forward, being prepared to have all of our construction phases up and running, all new schools in place by September of 28th. So we are currently started phase 2 and we're in detailed designs of phase 1. The next slide, reiterate what I just mentioned. We are currently in design development phase for phase 1 schools as we progress towards construction documents. We have done the UDC for the city of Madison. We are actually now that I'm missing for planning commission. And the final UDC on Wednesday for hopefully submission for final building permitting to move forward construction to phase 1 schools as we finish the designs internally. And as I mentioned, we have now officially kicked off phase 2 with Senate being moved up from phase 3 up to phase 2. We are starting those input sessions with students or with staff, then we'll compress the students and community in the spring as we look to fully launch the schematic design work on phase 2 schools with the expectation to have our designs done no later than next summer as we start pushing towards the build phases of those projects. Next slide, please. As mentioned before, keeping the exercises that we've talked about last budget cycle, our costs are still held at $507 million. As we continue to make tweaks and looks at designs and how we operate those buildings, this is the budget we stay with the constraints of, including giving opportunity for added expansion of program. Next slide, please. So a little bit of the work accomplished. Looking back from July, we did a lot of phase work. We talked in one of the board meetings, I believe in August, talking heavily about how we get to the money, right? So we've come up with those phases, and in August, we took more into informational things for the design development, and started to really hone in what the internal vision of the school looks like, how the feel, the shape, the colors, and the dimensionals. And then also took that information back to our staff at Sherman Shabazz Blackhawk Gompers to really get the curriculum's feedback on what does this look like to you? Put this space into action. How does it feel? How does it look? Can it function? Will it work? To make sure we don't have something that's done in a vacuum. And we're getting that very corrective feedback of, I think we should look at this a little bit further, maybe a little more extra classroom space here. How about this hallway? How does this look? How do I look down this hallway? So we've taken all the information back and make sure we incorporate those key elements. In addition to, we shared this information to our back to school nights for our local school communities as they came back to school in the end of August. Got some more informational feedback from our parents, our local community staff members to give us some really good feedback about, hey, you guys are doing a good job. What about this? How does the outside look? Where do I drop my student off? How does this interact with the playgrounds? And they really gave some good informational feedback. As we take that information, we roll it forward into our design development meetings and also preparing for making those changes, what we've heard, into what we, in middle of October, our community input sessions, right? Sharing here at the next board meeting or the operational work group, what our finished designs will be close to being done with, and then sharing that to the community as well as like, here's kind of our last look. Let's get that final piece of input, make sure we accommodate for those as we move towards the construction documents. Next slide. Talked a little bit about this. It's a couple sessions here. You can see we have the staff input sessions. Had a heavy engagement from our staff members, really looking at designs. How does it shape? Really taking their feedback. We saw a lot of interaction about the excitement and the way they're going to shape their new space and envisioning what it will look like in the embrace of this is going to be ours in 2 years. Let's make sure we do this right. Let's make sure we give that feedback and also understanding what they can improve or how we can improve. Looking forward, like I mentioned, the next slide. Upcoming activities. So phase 2 is actually kicked off. We're doing more informational meetings and start gathering that forward for our phase 2 schools. We have gone through the UDC committee through Blackhawk Gompers has been approved. Sherman Shabazz is this week, including the city plan commission meeting is tonight for working for development for permitting. In October, we have a big review of our final look at designs. We're what we call the 95% completions as we start rolling towards 100% DD estimate completion and development, which we'll share to the board in the next operational work group. And then broadcasting that same information, we're going out to the public to ask for information. One last view, how does it look to the community, the local school staff, the general community as we start rolling through those the midweek of October. Taking that information back, get the information put back together in some finalized dimensional things, making sure that we've got to incorporate all the feedback that we can incorporate into the systems and the sites that make sense. And then moving forward at the end of October, very quickly as we then start the last part of phase one, which is constructing documents, which is blueprints. Like we are there. It's crazy fast, but we're there, right?
Okay.
So taking that information back, starts to develop on the blueprints, which is a long period of time, takes about 2 months to do blueprints. Imagine all the wires and the stuff behind the walls, they can't just, it's not drawings anymore. It's actually realization. So about 2 months getting that phase through. That'll also give us the setup for beginning of the year. We'll have the next year, we'll have the finished documents ready to go. A bunch of these, I won't elaborate, a lot of these, I'll share these, you guys do them as your time. I'll get a set of posters out here if you want to take a look. These are larger versions, and a poster that I'll bring out, I share with you to review before you leave today. And that concludes my section.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Board member Vandermeulen, I see your hand.
Sorry. Thank you very much. Just one, I'd want to say the White Horse space. I got to see that new maker space recently. Those 3D printers are really something. Someone was making a robot when I was there, and it was really kind of cool to watch. So I really appreciate that. My two questions are, one, how are we at making sure that like things like elevators, accessibility, and that is all included in Sherman Shabaza? We got that all straightened?
Yeah,
Oh.
we have added a second elevator because it's 2 separate school distinctions and we have 2 separate dropping areas. So we have that school.
And the second one, and Scott, I know I'm driving you crazy, so I'm apologizing in advance. But the La Follette push button for the library, is there any progress on that?
I don't have an update at this time. I haven't been back there all.
You're busy as heck, so I'm just thrilled that you doing as well as you are. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board member Nichols, then board member Mosner.
Thank you, Chair Castro. Scott, thank you for the update. Thank you for keeping all the pieces moving forward. I don't know if this question is actually directed for you or if it's more of a thought question, and it might come across as very random.
Sure.
But my wondering is, for the homeowners and the apartment owners, all the folks that are in the neighborhoods of the schools where we're doing health, are there conversations with the city, or as a new school is being constructed and the old school is still there, does it have any tax impact for folks in that neighborhood? Or is it not related at all? I just was curious if, I know the city is assessing like individual homes for property tax rate, but when there's a build in a neighborhood, yeah, I was just curious if there's anything connected to like this, the way the city views or assesses property value or
Yeah.
not. I know, that's why I said it's kind of random.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, our bills are taxable because we're tax exempt, but
Yeah.
the question of, and I'll have to check, I can check with the city of Madison assessor's office and ask them, if we are building a brand new building and from one side of the property to the other, is there a formula for you to reassess properties or change? Okay, I can ask, I don't know if there is or not.
Okay, because for a while, the older building will still be there.
Yeah.
And then we're constructing the new, and so, yeah, it was just I don't know why I thought of that, but I was just curious, and I think as you mentioned, going to the city's design.
Yeah, UDC and.
Yeah, UDC, I mean, it's great that we have that level of collaboration, and I was wondering, how does it connect potentially to how property is assessed? All right. Thanks for that.
Thank you. Board member Mosner Feltham, and then board member Saravo.
Thank you. Super exciting. My questions, per usual, are about how this work touches the instructional life of teachers and the educational experience that students have. This is like a weird thing where like my questions in the ops work group are always like,
Mhm.
but whatever, I mean, that's fine. This is what I'm curious about.
Absolutely.
I'm also curious about what that dollar sign is on the timeline in detail. Should I know what that is?
Line in detail.
It's on
That's-
24.
That's,
Right. Oh, that's the break point where we start to making sure we hit the budget.
Got it. Okay,
That's
understood.
Dollar sign.
I understand.
The green budget is for budget.
I understand. Thank you. I got a little distracted. Okay, so you have all these staff members in these kickoff meetings or in these back to school meetings who are like, oh, this is gonna be so exciting because I can do this and this and this and this. And you're there and you're listening. And the teaching teams are there and the building leadership is there. My question is like how that excitement that is spurred on by the construction ends up in our instructional leadership spaces such that that can be properly supported. Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, so so when we have those discussions,
Yeah,
we also have with central office district teams
okay,
to help kind of shape what the vision of some of that might look like. We roll that down and it rolls up. So
okay,
there's kind of a two-way rolling back and forth dialogue between multiple groups. It also helps to pull them together, because if we see a disparity, we also bring the disparity.
Okay.
So you're saying this, or you're saying this, so we help get them collaborated. We're like, okay, now we have a common goal, so that we can work commonly together.
You're telling me all the right people are talking about all of this.
We're playing the triangle game and pulling the triangles to be aligned.
Yeah, board member Bolster felt on one thing I'll share is that, you know, we're also ensuring that these plans aren't done on blueprints and then built and then set in stone. These are built as flexible spaces. That may be one thing for a year. And then a new class is in there and it has to be a completely different configuration. And we have the ability to do that. So we're not limiting ourselves as well. Dr. Stanford, I don't know if you've got any level of specificity with some of the teams and what they've been looking at, but feel free to share.
I was just gonna say, in addition to that, there's also been opportunities for teachers to work with Scott and his team to bring in the plans into their classrooms and have student voice. And also just talking just through what this means, what this will look like. And also, again, just taking their ideas and how that's gonna help to shape the school.
We did last fall or last spring, we did it at Senate Middle School. And this fall, we're working with the middle schools to put that part of the curriculum. They did the same thing with, to get a voice with the staff.
I love to hear it. You know, you don't get the opportunity to be in a middle school that's being rebuilt all the time. And so I'm really thrilled to hear that we're making like full use of the real experiences that students are gonna be there for. Sort of like that question. You also don't get to like say goodbye to your middle school and move into a new building every single year. And so I'm curious about, and maybe this is something that you'll talk about later as it gets closer to it. What like, when you're thinking, I'm trying to for this one, when you're thinking about like the professional development plans for, let's say, all middle schools for a year, but Senate is gonna need to do something a little bit different because this is the year that you're gonna walk a bunch of middle schoolers through the building and be like, okay, we're gonna get rid of this. What do we think of this? What does it mean that this is? You're gonna have guest speakers want to come in and talk about their experience at those schools. So how does knowing that that's gonna happen on the referendum construction end up in like the professional development plans for any given school? Or is that like, ask me in 6 months? Cause that's fine.
Yeah.
Great, sounds awesome.
Ask me in 6 months, yes.
Great, thank you so much.
I will say, we have already started the communication plans to rest.
Mhm.
So that's part of our communication scheme of like here about June of 27, we've got to plan that ceremony for Sherman Shabazz and Black Hawk Gompers. And what that means is having the ability to go to public broadcasting and say, come visit this school one last time. There are chances to take some bricks. There may be a time capsule opening. There are some things or videos and things that we're putting together, part of that program. It's already on the comms communication side to put that forward
That's super exciting.
Rest.
What I don't want to have happen is that I'm like a sixth grade science teacher who's trying to get through a certain amount of content. To be like, oh, actually, we're gonna do it this week. And I'm like, I can't do it this week. I'm in the middle of what I'm doing to teach science. So I'm just making sure that that those triangles are all coming together.
They'll be
as
coordinated.
I said. Wonderful. Great. Really exciting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Board Member Sarabo, then Board Member Mulgrew.
Board Member Castro. And Board Member Nichols, when you were talking, I was actually thinking of something when we did the boundary about the buildings themselves. And there was a lot of intention around like the chimney that's part of that one school, and that was taken in. Like, how does the community know that those things are like certain potential? Like, how do they know it's being considered? It's something the community notices, and I was thinking like, what does the neighborhood notice about the changes in the school, or what are they gonna appreciate about it, or what?
Yes, so I think I know
Yeah.
where you're going.
Yeah.
So each school site has kind of unique needs, right? Or unique
Yeah.
features about it. So Black Hawk offers a beautiful community garden. So we've engaged quite a bit with community garden folks. Meeting tomorrow with the Eagle Scout group that planted a lot of those trees around the playground. So we're working on means to move and change that and save the trees if we can, right? And to build a new scape that doesn't disturb nature. The chimney swifts at Cherokee, right? We're working at Southwest Bird Migration Foundation. They're working on independently building some funds to help us put a faux chimney up for different types of means of the new building. And then working in that temporary, there's a spot to how do we build and have them at the same time and not have to do that? So we started those conversations with them already. We haven't had an official meeting. We've had a bunch of email exchange. We're working to put a full meeting together to talk about what that looks like.
I think the only other one that I was sticking out in my mind is I think Shabazz has a big mural on.
Yeah, they're saving the artwork. Yeah, we're working on saving the artwork and moving and repurposing it. Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure how that was on the wall, so I just didn't know.
There's
how that was.
a wood front on it. Some of that can come off.
Oh, okay, okay. I think the only other question that I was wondering is when you're talking about staff input, I was just wondering how that was done and how did you connect with both educators and non-educators about the different spaces that they'll be accessing afterwards? Because those are different timelines on like when they can give you that kind of feedback and stuff.
Yeah, so when we had CTE spaces, we had all this kind of CTE representative groups come along with district leadership. We had music and art spaces, kind of the same thing. We had a powwow here one day and so let's figure out what this is and what this looked like. Then we went out to school sites and after the August and said, all school members, let's talk about the school in general, because a lot of times you can feed off each other. You can kind of get in a silo, but let's talk as a unit. So that information, a bunch of drawings on the table, it's on the screens and allowed them to really interact and talk about what it looks like. And some people may not have a different lens, right? Because they work closely doesn't mean they work the same. So having that interaction allowed the architects and our groups to kind of sit back and listen to them interact. And we were able to say, what about this? I heard this. Explain me more. Tell me more. So then we can say, okay, yeah, we design like this. Oh, wait, maybe we had to look at this differently, right? We can look at this lens. So we had smaller groups and then we pulled them all together because we don't want silos. We want to make sure they can interact in the building together. So that really pulled the unit together. That's where the principals brought all of the staff together. We'll have one more of those coming up as we get towards the very end of it to make sure that, hey, we did this right? Here's why we couldn't do that. Or we didn't understand how this is, like explain to me a little bit more. Or yeah, look what we did. We took this feedback. This is big. We changed this and allows them to see that interactive piece, not just rebuild it and you're going to deal with it. That's not what we're going to do.
Oh, that's great. I think the other thing that I know that you might know too, because like when you're in new buildings, you're getting a lot of like natural light, probably more away than that. Something that Hamilton did recently was put up where you cannot see inside for like safety reasons, so you can't see everybody walking inside. Is that something that is considered on the front end, or will that be something that the school does if they want it as like a safety feature? Like where does that land on the list of things that are done initially? Or
yeah, it's a very, very controversial topic, right?
Okay.
With new glass and new given certain ways, at night you can see it. During the day, you typically have a little bit more reflection, and some of our older buildings have glass that's fully transparent.
Right.
No matter what time of day. So the new glazing and new light and the new building, seal something like an outline, which you can see fully through.
Right.
And at night, it's a different story, right? We want to have the ability to the building look inviting.
Right.
We've also heard from our students and staff, we don't like a lot of glass because multiple reasons, right? So for us, it's finding that very good delicate balance. There'll be some nice glass architecture, but it's also enough to get natural lighting and make it feel inviting and yet large, but not feeling a perception that I don't feel safe.
That's interesting. I like how you kind of focus on student feedback too, because there's so much different funnels.
Can you do
of
me a
feedback.
favor and move these bowls?
I've heard of a lot of people like, I want glass everywhere. And then you ask everybody, they go, You're like, I agree, right?
Okay,
For multiple reasons.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Board Member Muldrow.
Thank you, Chair Castro. My first question is, one of the things I think would be tremendously helpful in looking at these projects is if we had a clear sense of the student population attending each of these facilities right now, projected sense of growth over the course of the next decade. My question is, are we building additional capacity for student growth? Can we kind of see that we're going from this many square feet to this many square feet? Where can we find that kind of information? And I'm sorry if I missed it on here.
Yeah, so in prior conversation, it's been there and I can put it up next month agenda, but I can tell you Sherman Travas max up actually 576.
Okay.
When it's new building and Blackhawk Conference are just under 500.
What are they at right now?
Currently at 330 enrollment at Blackhawk and 440 given on the day or time of the year, it's 430, 440.
Okay. Given those adjustments, as we're examining the boundaries for any given middle school, how is that being taken into consideration? And were we to see growth that kind of outpaces our expansion, are we thinking about it creatively? And I think this conversation really pairs well with the conversation about transportation. So the first question is, are we seeing the academic results in terms of our middle school students going closer to 9 a.m. than 7:30 a.m. generally across the district? Are we considering what an hour zero could look like or staggered start time for our middle school population? Were we to outpace the growth that we are building additional capacity towards? I feel like that's a question for both of you, and so.
Yeah, Board Member Muldrow, I'm trying to, I think I've got the beginning questions. Share more about the 0 hour and how that would alleviate capacity issues.
Right, so if you had students having staggered start times and staggered end times, the who all is in the building at the same time shifts slightly and who needs what facilities, you kind of gain 2 hours on the end of the day, you know, to move around. I also think you provide an option for our students who maybe say getting to school at 9, or for my family, that actually doesn't work particularly well, or for my extracurricular activities, that doesn't work particularly well. Any kind of more fluid expression of how young people can experience school that makes space for growth and also allows for young people to have a variety of options. If an hour zero isn't what you all are thinking of in terms of how to resolve a space issue, I'm curious what you're thinking.
So staggered within a thing.
Yeah.
I've not had any discussions like that. When I think of what a staggered time would be for in a building, there would be staff schedules, there would be transportation schedules. There would be a lot of logistics, and right now I'm just thrilled that we could bring a presentation tonight, and we're kind of back to a place where, you know, we can begin to project a little bit. There's no doubt that all of our plans for the future, building for the future, are going to rely very heavily on Scott and the team that was just with him previously. So we've not looked at any nuances like that. I think the first thing that we're looking at is just collecting some feedback on the late start to see if it would even be feasible for us to consider, you know, going back to having either 2 tiers or making an adjustment. One thing I've heard is that 4:30 is late for after school activities for middle school students. So, you know, that decision has to happen rather quickly. I do not want to bring to you in the spring, hey, here's a decision. I'd much rather have us socialize that around the middle of the year so that we can communicate it in earnest this spring instead of making the decision this spring. But we're not there yet, as Scott mentioned. I think the capacity issues, I wish I could give you a clear projection on this. I drove the city today. It's startling, what's happening and how quickly it's happening. I know I sound like a broken record, right? But it is. I mean, there are new things that are being plotted, planned, built, as we speak. So we're going to have to go into this knowing that there could potentially be some challenges if there are large enrollment shifts. And there are challenges to building capacity, staffing, and to transportation. And we have to do our very best to get ahead of that. And that's what we hope to do in our build for the future plan. So that we can put some really good systems in place for if there are sudden changes or there's a net new student population in Madison as well.
My last question is about the buildings that we're planning to demolish and if there is flexibility in our plans in relationship to those buildings. In part, because I've heard folks float the idea of using those buildings potentially for housing. And also because the conversation we're having right now about capacity, we knock down a building that we're gonna need. I'm curious about how we're balancing that out. The other thing I want to emphasize in terms of growth is that I know there's a lot of conversation about growth on the west side. I do want to say that one of the fastest growing areas of Madison is moving towards Sun Prairie. And I struggle with the idea that we as a city will invest in that growth of our community and our school district will not follow it, that we will surrender or allow for that portion of Madison to be annexed by Sun Prairie School District. And so I do want us to think really strategically about we're taking into consideration the entire growth of the city.
You're speaking our language without a doubt. We've had lots of conversations just like this. I think Scott, I'm gonna speak for you, Scott, if you don't mind. I think he mentioned west side just because there's roofs on houses right now. Remember in June, we had to bring to you, we had to declare this area wholesome. So those are the ones that are just being built right now, but we are keenly aware of those other areas. And when we look at our boundaries, solidifying and shoring out those boundaries, we know we have work to do. We absolutely do.
I agree.
The second part, you had one piece of that though.
There was a housing question related to the buildings we're gonna demolish.
Right.
Currently, the sites that we're active, Sherman Shabazz, the building is not.
Mhm.
It needs to come down for multiple reasons. It's at the end of life, 105 years old. It's time.
Sometimes old buildings last really, really well.
Not this one. Blackhawk Gompers, when it's been designed, we want to keep the green space. That is the green space on the west side of that property. And as a result, when we flip locations, we have to have staff location, parking and moving the community garden. So moving those spaces then forces us to get rid of the old building in that particular spot, just because that's a beautiful landscape there to the west. Could we shift and do something different? Likely, we could. But the challenge of what's the right feasibility for what can be converted to hasn't had discussion in a short amount of time. We've had to react. And some other sites maybe has part of that. I can tell you there's a lot of other constraints in our next phases, which kind of, we don't have a lot of property for considering what the size of buildings we're putting on these to accommodate growth, right? And expanding curriculum and instruction in addition to population changes. So currently on these next sites, I don't foresee any of that. Now phase 3 potentially on one of the sites, if we chose to rebuild one of them, may have some opportunity for that. But otherwise we got 8 acres of property and to build one and to replace one, you're talking very close interaction for our students. And we may run into a safety risk or just a change being so close to our students. And that may open another element because it's not a 50-acre plot where we can say, hey, we're on one end. And now we have space in between. There'll be no natural buffer. They're going to be right on top of each other, relative speaking.
No, I greatly appreciate that level of detail and the thought that's going into this. I think the last thing I want to say is just a comment question. I think I have a lot of nervousness about the long-term impact of kind of engaging in a trade war at the federal level or the long-term consequences in relationships to tariffs and the impact they'll have on local government. And I think we need to be really mindful of what raw materials are going to look like as we embark on this project. This is not something I think any of you can prevent. But I do think it's something that we need to explain to our community pretty effectively and proactively. And I think it's a way in which we're gonna have to talk about how the price tag of these projects evolves.
We do have weekly meetings with the CMs in our owners group and the architect. What do we need to get now? What's the market doing? I watch the market closely. My past tells me to when I do it by nature. And as I start to see any changes that come up, I first thing come up, this is starting to look, what do we need? What do we need to do? And we're getting close to really identifying everything in our school. So as those opportunities, there's anything that will shift, we have enough time to react, and working with Bob's team, we know we have the cash available to do that. So we've already aligned for those expenditures. When we start to see a shift and get it defined, we will go attack it, just to secure the pricing, not reduce the pricing, right? It's a matter of securing at this point, not an example of trying to buy bulk. It's a matter of holding, securing.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your approach to this work. Chair Castro, that's it for me, and I see.
Board Member Mulder, one other thing, the Build for the Future plan, we have a 2-year contract with MGT, but one of the variables we've used a lot is in the next 25 years, Madison's going to grow by 100,000 people. We're setting the foundation for a way of working that's different for a school district, certainly different for MMSD. So this won't be the last of our discussions. We're not hoping to get everything we can into 2 years, because we know in 2 years, there's going to be a need for additional planning. So know that I'm very interested in seeing what other housing options are available. In fact, I'm really curious about the Eastmoreland Church project. It's almost on the steps of Schenck Whitehorse. And I think we'll learn a lot from what proximity looks like for affordable housing. So I'm really excited to watch that one take place, though it's not our property. That's
I'm like,
3 away.
Schenck is one where I'm like, oh man, that population really is poised to grow.
Yeah.
Because of those two developments on either side.
They have no room, 0.
Mhm.
The other thing I'll say is, we didn't mention, we do plan to recycle as many of the materials as possible in the demolition.
Absolutely. It's part of sustainability.
Scott, I know, has talked about that before as well.
Real quick, I know Board Member Moser Feltham wanted to offer a quick comment to your comment, Board Member Moser, and then Board Member Sarabo.
Thank you for all your question. I was thinking, part of what you brought up was, is the later start time work? And I don't know if we can say like for sure yes or for sure no, because it's very complex young people. We can't ever point to one thing, but I am reminded of our work group meeting last week, where we heard some just like really amazing wins at some of our middle schools. That, for some of those students and the other ones, maybe the start time is part of it. So it just made me think of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Board
Thanks,
members? Yep. Board Member Sarabo?
Thank you, Board Member Castro. This would just be really quick, but I was thinking that when you were talking about older buildings, and I'm just very cognizant of how old Lapham is. I know I've brought this up before, but I know that the community is concerned about how old that building is and where that is, even if the timeline doesn't land there, like the concern is up there. And I think I just get concerned as like not having, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I mean,
know.
it is for sure an aging building. We have to spend more resources to keep aging buildings running.
Yeah.
It's structural.
Also recognizing the restricting things because of how old it is and what happens,
Correct.
like with it too. That just kind of leaves it like, what does the community take back from that? Like the awareness and like, I just don't know.
Yeah, it's one of
Yeah.
many that are in that 100-year range.
Yeah.
Randall, Lapham, Emerson, Lowell, all roughly 80 to 100 years old. We're doing everything we can to maintain them. We still keep upping up to date. That's got new electrical in most of them. But HVAC systems are old. You're still using vents. So we try to maintain those, keep them as comfortable as possible. Or putting sun shades or sun sails to kind of reduce that solar effect happening on some of those buildings. But yeah, it is very, very high resources to maintain those older buildings. And as we work through the district of what's required, what's our requirement, facilities planning, those things come into effect, right? How much we spend every year and what's the optimization for our students and the ability to access those buildings. But that's part of our long range facility.
Excellent. Like, I'm just gonna leave it out there as like, I might just like continue to bring it up just because I know the community's talking about it right now. I know they want to know exactly like when something does come to the table, they really would like to know what's going to happen in that particular part.
But remember, we are taxed with a $507.
Yeah.
You know, for us to understand the tax tolerance, the state of public education and funding. You know, it may not be that long, and we're talking about the next iteration of our building plans. But we'll need some time. We'll need a little bit of time. You know, to do anything at Lapham or any of the schools that Scott mentioned would be similar bill to what we're doing right now as well.
Sure, makes sense.
All right, thank you. My one comment is as we go on this process for school boundaries and boundary reimagination, and Madison continues to grow, just emphasizing that the new buildings we build, or as we continue to renovate building, that especially the newer buildings, that they are renovation friendly. So like if we need to have a new wing attached to a new school, that that we're building in such a manner that it makes it easier to do. Sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But otherwise, I feel like everyone exhausted pretty good questions so far, so.
Yeah, the only challenge I will say openly is Sherman Shabazz is probably as large as it will go. Because we are land constrained to the north from an easement to the west Sherman Avenue, to the east Ruskin, and the houses to the south. It is already kind of blocked to what it would be, and we built some natural capacity in there. But the other buildings that we see and foreshadow will have the ability to move forward a little bit spaces to grow because it has more property to work with. Sherman Shabazz it'll be locked.
Yeah.
It's pretty tight.
Got it. Well, thank you so much for the information and answering our questions tonight.
Thanks.
Moving on to,
Again.
Board Member Pearson.
Yeah, my question, I think I've asked it before, and it's somewhat in line with the referendum, but also somewhat in line with some of the innovative things that we are possibly looking to do in the future. Um, as the boundary review, as the new schools are looking to be built, what is the conversation about kind of doing like specialty schools that are more focused in certain areas? Um, and is there a conversation about shifts that may happen within where our current schools are and what the opportunities are there for I'm thinking of um like a tech school or something like that, a school of technology, a school of like the arts, the school of like those kind of things, a language school. And so as we're kind of like building out the referendum and like updating some of the schools, I think there is an opportunity to kind of redefine what our schools are and what they look like, especially as we are thinking about the boundaries as well.
Thank you, Vice Chair. The Assistant Superintendent Green is come on the screen. All yours, Cindy.
Thank you, Vice President Pearson, for that question. I will say all of what you said is part of what we are learning right now from our families. So we have a survey out to our families right now to learn what is most important to them. That survey closes on the 26th. That will be part of the work that we will be bringing forth to the Board of Education in November. It will help us with our guiding principles. It will let us know if families are interested in more specialty or choice options. That is literally one of the areas that they can identify. But that is some of the things that we've talked about as school districts across the country are kind of changing and thinking about their own marketing and recruiting. So we'll be really excited to hear what families say, and then we will also learn from families starting in probably February of 2026 all the way up to about January of 27. We're going to be doing community engagement and community forums to understand more directly for each community what families are interested in. So all of that is part of both the work with MGT, but what is going to be part of our Building for the Future plan.
I appreciate that answer. I think there's a lot of exciting things that and opportunities for true innovation and creativity I think we have here. Um, you know, I don't think in my life, well, no, in my lifetime, I haven't seen this kind of level of work. And I think in some of our lifetimes, we probably have not. And so it is an exciting time. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to offer those kind of opportunities to our young people. And then I guess my last question is just in general of like, kind of similar to Martha, but more so just like when there are some of those schools that need some of the possible renovations or updatings. I'm thinking of like talking with some of the staff at like, for instance, the Row, that they don't necessarily have I think it was air conditioning and, you know, it's still kind of hot right now. And so how are we thinking about even some of those smaller updates? Well, it's not really small, but some of those smaller updates because not building a whole new school. But are we still considering those as we are kind of like maintaining some of
Yeah,
those
so
smaller projects?
yeah, so some of the immediate needs that we're addressing are just general HVAC systems, our current unit vent systems, our plumbing and electrical, that we're kind of going the basic stuff first to make sure they keep running and functional. And then we're working towards long-range facility, what makes logical sense for long-range planning for future referendums or budgeting for future projects, if it's a library, air conditioning or updating currently what we have. We're in the middle of some of that process as we're working through it. More funding in for this year for Fund 41. Let's just get us back to baseline. And as we continue to grow that foundational piece, it becomes a bigger discussion of what becomes next targets or opportunities for expansion of those programs.
I appreciate that. Thank you. That's it for me, Savian. Thanks for recognizing me.
Thank you, Board Member Vandermeulen.
Yeah, yes, just quick question for Cindy Green. So you stated that there's a bus survey out and then there's a choice survey out, both? Is that it? I'm confused.
No, sorry, no, thank you for asking the clarifying question. No bus survey. We have a survey out for families right now as it relates to the boundary review. And within that survey is asking families what is most important to them in terms of their students' educational experience, walkability, choice, program options, transportation, etc. So those are some of the questions in there. So parents and family members can rate what's most important to them.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey. Thank you. Board Member Pearson, is your hand still up or just?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Cindy, can you just when you say choice, can you just clarify what exactly you mean by that? Just I kind of understand what you might mean by that, but just so everyone understands what you mean by that.
Yeah, absolutely. We have quite a few examples. One, we ask specifically about language immersion programs such as Spanish language immersion or other language immersion programs. And then we also ask about school choice options such as a STEM school, an arts school, things like that. So we give the actual examples in the survey as well. Does that clarify, Board Vice President Pearson?
Yeah, no, that's clarifies. I just wanted just to clarify
Yeah.
for the public because choice is a very hot buzzword. So I just wanted to make sure that we're clarifying that.
Yeah, all within our public school system. So these are options that we are considering within MMSD. So thank you for making sure I clarified that.
All right, Board Member Saravo.
Thank you, Board Member Castro. I'm glad Board Member Pearson brought that up. I was wondering, I have a request that there be some consideration into using specifically when we're saying choice, because there's such a relatability right now to a very specific school when we talk about that, or we talk about when we're using that word. There's right now, when we're talking about budget and stuff like that, that is very much a term that's not talking about public schools all the time. I think that there should be some consideration of finding a terminology that still encompasses the same idea without using that, because I think that's part of the confusion that is going on within the community right now, is when that gets used, concerns get raised because there's already a correlation to that specific verbiage. And having it clarified here, that just kind of speaks even more volumes to me on, like, that really needs to be carefully considered if we're gonna say that there are options. Maybe use something else that goes in there, because there's just very specific language when it comes to very specific types of schools right now, and I would just appreciate if we had clarity around that. Thank you.
Board member.
I'm gonna let it go.
All right. Likewise. Okay, moving on to item 6.6, so updates on the budget.
First, I just want to recognize Scott for his work. It's a lot of information. He's bringing our way, coordinating a lot of work. Scott, we just all really appreciate you and your team, so thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Guthrie.
Moving into some revised preliminary budget work, Bob Soldner is here. We also have Jennifer and Rachel and her team. Colleen is here, so we're going to talk all things 25-26 revised prelim budget. Bob, you're up.
Dr. Gothard. So Jesse, get the slide up, the next slide, Jesse. All right, so we talked a few months ago about how this was a strange kind of state budget year in federal government. State budget was delayed in terms of getting adopted. Actually, I thought it was gonna get signed into law late July, but we had the time to take a look at some of the state estimates from our June preliminary budget. So kind of at that point where I don't really like to start changing numbers at this point, because third Friday, September is just a few days away, which is a big driver in school finance, which will significantly impact our 25-26 budget. But I thought it was important, kind of level set us as we start talking about some amendments today and getting ready as we do our final work towards the fall approved vote on the 25. So the far right side of the table talks about the 25-26 preliminary budget. In June, the change in fund balance was negative $11.8 million, right? So at this point, I'm viewing 25-26 as no change to Fund 10. That's primarily the result of a significant increase in state special education. And some other re-estimates in terms of some of this other state aid dollars, continuing to refine the cost numbers in terms of positions and big drivers of our. But it's information that I think is real important to share with you all in terms of where we are at this point in time in terms of Fund 10. Gives us some flexibility and some options, but it's primarily for in the state categorical provided by the governor of legislature. Now, so that's the first bit of those. I want to spend a little bit more time on the budget timeline coming up, just to kind of ground us of where we are at and what's coming up next. I mentioned third Friday, September is this Friday, the big count date and the school finance for other purposes. But it really starts us off in the final working of the numbers in preparation for October. We'll get our revenue limit numbers based on that. I'll start doing some preliminary work in-house. And then in mid-October, October 15th to be specific, the Department of Public Instruction will release statewide revenue limit estimates, which will include those third Friday numbers. It also includes the third Friday numbers from the independent charter school, public schools, that we have residents attending that impacts our revenue number. The other big piece of number, private school choice voucher program for the Wisconsin Brown Choice Program, especially in scholarship. On October 15th, we get the numbers based on those participating private schools third Friday counts. So a lot of big things are going to be changing our bottom line budget. But again, our Fund 10, we're starting at a zero change. Our revenues are equaling our expenditure at this point in time, one that we've got some changes coming up. So it's an exciting time for the budget for us, for me. Start seeing where some numbers are coming and will end up, but I feel we're in a really good position in terms of our fund. and some of the planning the last 2 years. Okay, a little bit on the guiding principles. We're gonna talk a little bit about a few more budget adjustments, and our budget's really about a balance. We talked about the operating referendum that we're operating under now, facilities referendum. It's balanced between investing in staff, early literacy, K expansion, smaller class sizes for K1, involved community schools initiative that we brought on based funding. A lot of importance on the operations and meeting needs and services to students and families. But we also want to keep an eye on our facility, not only the dollars that are approved in the referendum, but also the money we're investing from our ongoing, what we call annual or operating dollars. So it's really getting that balance, that multi-year perspective that I think Dr. Gothard and our team continue to look, guide our decision. The revenue streams we'll continue to talk about. It's really the revenue limit, it's categorical aids, which we've talked about, and then it's the referendum operating authority that I've already talked about. But the next slide, Jesse, in terms of the spot where we are in, which is critically important in terms of the orange line being above that blue line. The blue line is CPI, just cost of living. The blue line does not include our increased cost in terms of some of the initiatives I've mentioned in terms of the investment that we've did in the last 2 years. That orange line is the significant change in terms of the approval by the voters to increase our annual operating dollars, which then you all make as a board decision between how much operations and how much kind of facilities and staff. And so that number is going to change at projection 25-26 when we get those factors that I just talked about over 15. But some good news on revenue limit membership. The next slide, Jesse. We have submitted our summer school count. So I did update the revenue limit projections in terms of the FTE. It's 402 FTE that we're looking at right now, based on the reports that we submitted, based on summer school of 2025 attendance. So numbers wise, the summer school increase compared to what we had projected, we were looking at in terms of an increase for summer school, kind of straight lining what we were at the year before. So it's about a 50 FTE increase. If you look at the trend the last 3 years, including this year in 2023 at 300, then 354, and now 402. That's a good trend line. It's reflective of the increased opportunities you all are providing for students and families during the summer. It's resulting in more students attending, which increases our revenue stream under revenue limits. These are sustainable base building revenues. So it's one of the tools that allows us to reinvest and cover the cost of summer school, but it impacts our entire budget. So I consider that a positive trend line in terms of our third Friday enrollment, but I really don't have any really good information other than I think we are where we expected to be on enrollment. Our enrollment team is working with schools to get students into our system that they're serving. But even though the third Friday, September count is this Friday, we won't get real hard numbers in terms of the calculation we use for revenue limits for 2 weeks after that, right? So although the count's coming, it's going to take a few weeks for us to go through our numbers, verify the formulas that we take, our head count of students showing up, and what we can count for revenue in terms of generating. But I think it's a positive that we continue to build forward on the interests of counts of how important they are at the school level and how they impact our level. So a little bit about on the next slide, Jesse, in terms of the discussion of the enrollment. I mentioned the summer school. It's the numbers are reflective of the continued investment, some expansion of the staff that work, our staff work on that. I think it's also in part reflective of the Freedom School we offered for the first time this summer at Mendota, right? It's offering opportunities for families to be engaged during the summer, and it's being reflected counts in terms of the benefits. Talked about Third Friday, and then I already mentioned independent charter schools on how both our residents that choose charter schools not authorized school board, and private schools, in terms of the private school voucher program. Those numbers are revealed to us, shared with us for the first time on October 15th. They have direct impacts on our revenue year. DPI provide those with us. In the private schools, independent charter schools, just to be clear, they're operating the same way we operate. Get a third Friday count, and then you have to do calculations. So that they're contingent, just like we are on our current year's third Friday in terms of the impacts. Finally, a reminder on the next slide, even though we're seeing increases in 2025, revenue limits are a 3-year rolling average, so the up is just 1/3 in this year, right? So in this case, in our reality for 25-26, it's a 2023 third Friday count that's fully annualized in terms of the 3-year rolling average. So as we are seeing increases, they are tempered by that 3-year rolling average. No positive, but tempered. Then the next slide is the grid that I've been sharing in terms of the historical perspective on our 3-year rolling average, going back to 11 and 12 and where we are at projected for 25-26. And then finally, the last 2 slides are still we're expecting about $40 million more this year. At this point in time, taking a look at revenue limit authority, which then is offset by what should be pretty close to a $50 million aid number, which was our July 1st estimate and finalized on October 15th, which we'll use that to that $50 million reduce the property tax levy impacts in terms of the final budget at the October 1st. Okay, so that's a preliminary budget kind of update before we get into the next stage. Pause for questions.
Okay. Board Member Vandermeulen.
Just one quick question on the special ed reimbursement. I know it states 42% was the reimbursement, but I know that some certain, not some sufficient. I'm just curious on that. Will that affect our projections at all in providing the necessary needs for special education out of the general fund? Will that have a great impact or not as much? Because it'll end up being about 38% actual release.
Oh, yeah. Come on, Nikki, we gotta be a little bit more positive at 38%. Right now, I've got 39.5% reimbursement. We've been doing a lot of talking in the region and other school finance officials throughout the state. It does say 42%, and normally at a minimum is at least 2 percentage points lower. That's obviously contingent on how fast the costs are increasing in terms of implementing IEPs. But yeah, most of us are plugging in about a 39.5%. And that categorical, that re-estimate on the revenues is really what's driving the zero Fund 10 impact, right? So as those revenues come in, we're spending less in Fund 10 in terms of the transfer to cover the costs in Fund 27, right? So
Okay.
that is built into our estimates. Now, what it ends up being, we'll see. We'll see.
All right, I appreciate that.
Board Member Muldrow.
Thank you, Board Chair Castro. I have 2 really quick questions, and honestly, they're from my own understanding. So I want to make sure this is the first year that we're not receiving ESSER funding, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. And so ESSER funding was coming in at around $43 million a year. Does that sound right to you, Bob?
It's about right, yeah.
It's weird how long ago this
Yeah.
seems.
I mean,
given
ESSER was
last
over
year.
years, so.
Mhm. So about that. So when you say that we're coming in this year with 40 million additional dollars, how does that account for that $43 million funding cliff created by ESSER? Basically what I'm asking are you saying that including the 43 million from ESSER, we're gonna outpace that spending by 40 million this year? Or are you saying we will actually see a loss of about $3 million this year because of the funding cliff created by that federal fund?
Yeah, So it's coincidental, the numbers are close, right? So our revenue limit does not take into account the level of federal dollars, right? The revenue limit is just the total that we get through state aids, property tax levy. We've really incorporated into our base funding, the ESSER projects that we discontinued or continued. For instance, the community schools in the budget 24-25, the $5 million and 60 some positions that we added into the base. I'm taking a look at our federal dollars for this point in our budget for 25-26. We're gonna get a little bit less in our big title, our federal programs, our title covered programs, and IDEA in total, but it's pretty close. So there's not a significant hole in the budget.
Okay, I really appreciate that, just in trying to piece together, you know, how did we get to this kind of current configuration of a budget? I also flagged this last year when we presented our audit, that we saw this huge portion of our budget that was grant funded, that was ESSER. And so I think it's an important thing to remember that no matter what the number looks like, the source is going to be pretty significantly different, because no matter how talented your grant writing team is, and they're tremendously talented, $43 million is a lot to make up for. That being said, is there a strategic effort in relationship to grant funding that we should anticipate absorbing kind of some of that loss of ESSER dollars at this point?
I agree, we have a good team. So leads the efforts of the agency in terms of writing for grants. I think that $3 to $4 million that we write for grants on top of our funding streams is gonna be what we should expect.
Okay.
The operating referendum for $100 million over 4 years really was a solution to the expenditures we started on ESSER, the base fund, right? So really that loss of the ESSER dollars has already been funded in.
Thank you so much for speaking to that.
Sure.
Thank you, Chair Castro.
Thank you. Board Member Saravo.
Thank you, Board Member Castro. I think the only thing I was wondering is, because now that we have someone who's a legislative liaison, we don't really have like a committee put together, so I don't know what kind of crossover there is, but how cognizant they are about where we are on a daily basis. How does that communication, what does that look like?
When you, Board Member Sarab, when you say can you share a little bit more?
Because Madison is just very unique or different than the districts around us, and she's specifically looking at where we are at and trying to stay active there and just trying to figure out
Physically, where are we? Like, what spaces are we in, or where's our budget at?
where's the budget at in real time. Like how is she appreciating where our budget needs are on a deal? Where's the crossover on that type of understanding, as opposed to just being holistically aware of what the budget process?
Well, I would say that Victoria is very much in touch with Bob, his office, other districts, Milwaukee, the council, other large systems that are doing this. We're working right now on the beginning stages of what an advocacy platform could look like. And I shared the update that I'll be reaching out to each of you for some feedbacks, get some guidance on that. But then we're looking to truly set forth a kind of a 2-year plan for what is it that MMSD would like to advocate. Hopes that other districts are aligned with us as well.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing some more work in between that. It's just a lot of communication, looking for, trying to connect the dots and support lawmakers that have various, bills or areas of interest that overlap with ours, and making sure that we're supporting, our community in that way.
I know that we haven't really had a very, I don't know, not very, but I've not been able to be part of the legislative committee yet, or like, what does that look like also with our liaison involved? So I'm just curious to see like, what does it look like have all this going on and what we could accomplish while creating the most productive people in there so that we can stay on top of things and move forward with it.
Right, yeah, we didn't really have an advocacy
Yeah.
ethos or way that we do work, so we're getting back on track.
Yeah.
And very much looking forward to the leading voice in public education, not just here, but the state and the country.
Thank you.
Seeing none, we can move on. Great. We're gonna move on to some budget amendments that we want to have continued discussion on, and some of them are new items. Start with expansion of the 4K program, and Carletta and Colleen. Colleen's gonna be our voice leading up to this. Thank goodness, right, Carletta? Like Colleen Fox. Take it away, Colleen.
So I'm really excited to talk about the expansion of full day 4K options. We decided to expand to full day 4K in a couple additional school sites, and also to kind of look outside the box of full day 4K and trying to think about like how are we meeting the needs of families and what families are requesting. So as we wanted to add additional full day programs, we also wanted to make sure that we were filling our programs in order to really meet those needs. We ended up converting some of our half-day programs to full-day programs in order to do that. We also are piloting a 5-day full day a week program as well, in order to think a little bit about what families that have been continually requesting in our surveys, which is having the same hours and times in our 4K programs that are in the rest of our elementary programs, in order to kind of see what that looks like. It's not only something that our families have asked about. We've also seen that when it has been in the governor's budget the last 2 times, which it hasn't passed yet, we're still waiting, but we're hoping that when it will get passed, it is put in there as a 5-day a week program. It's not in there as a 4-day a week program. So we want to be proactive in knowing what do we need to do in order to be able to accommodate that. So we are providing $595,600 increase in FTE staffing, which equals 3.4 teachers, 2.4 FTE and 4K educational assistants, and then 1.2 additional allocation for 4K special education assistants as well. You know that there is more need when you convert from a half-day program to a full-day program. Next slide. We want to continue to remind the board, this map is on our website and it's being updated, but it just kind of shows and talks a little bit about where our school sites are, where our community partner sites are. And we want to make sure that as we were expanding our full day 4K options, we were also expanding them to our community partners sites and lifting them within our community partner sites. Our community partner sites provide wraparound care for our families that we can't provide within our MSCR programming because of licensing issues within our school sites. So it's really important that for our 4K programs that we have that wraparound care option for families. Okay, next slide. So our full day, we will be adding additional head spaces will be available for Head Start at different locations across the city. We also added full day programming at Red Caboose, the Playing Field, Bernie's Place, and Big Oak. So that will increase the amount of full day 4K spaces in our community partner sites by almost, I want to say about 70 sites, depending on how many each specific site is going to be taking. Next slide. And I just kind of talked a little bit more about that idea of 4K, the benefits of 4K community approach. You know, again, it's really important for our community that we are uplifting our early care and education sites, and that we're all working together with those sites. We want to make sure that our 4K community partner sites also can provide that wraparound care for before and after school, as well as we don't pay for additional, we pay a per child allocation. So the community partner sites are paying for the space and the furniture and materials and other things. We do provide some professional development and some family outreach as well. There's also no transportation costs that incur with our community partner sites as well. They also help to alleviate space issues, which I think is really important for us to remember, because many of our sites, the sites that were that we specifically chose those sites for a couple various reasons, whether it was the overflow in the transportation. We were overflowing kids at some sites. We know that there's continuing expansion in some parts of the city, but also that we know that some of our capacity on certain sides of our city we just have less capacity issues, within our buildings, where our buildings are full, and those sites that are located around there need to have those additional full day spaces in order to help support children. Next slide.
So in addition to the 4K SEAs that we added to support the expansion of 4K, we also have had several special education services priority adds. So the total was $350,500 at the elementary school level. That was a 0.5 FTE CC teacher. So it was one of our elementary schools on the east side had a greater number of students with special education service needs than we had calculated in the early spring. And that is a school that has apartment buildings that have recently been completed, very close to the grounds of the school. And then there was 1.64 FTE of SEAs across 5 schools at our elementary schools. 2 of those stemmed from discussions that happened during the workbooks in order to keep good staff at those schools at the same number of hours as the prior year. One of them was to support one of our ALSI participants to have a job at an elementary school, and 2 of those increases were in order to have FTE that provided benefits for staff. So that was supportive of helping to fill those SEA positions. At the middle school level, across 2 schools, we had 1.009 FTE SEA added. And one of those was to support a student with very high needs that was actually going from our intensive intervention programs into their homeschool, which was really exciting, but we provided supports for that student to be able to do that. And then one of those increases, a smaller amount, was to keep a staff member at the same FTE that they had been at in the prior school year. And then finally, at the high school level, 1.538 SEAs FTE was added across 3 high schools. 2 of those were to keep an SEA at 1 school. So at the end of last year, we had 2 SEAs at the high school level that thought they were going to need to work across 2 schools. We know that that's hard on staff and also takes time away from students. So we provided additional FTE to keep those SEAs at 1 school each. And then 1 additional increase in FTE was to support a high need student. And it was another high need student who moved from intensive intervention program services part-time to fully being at their high school. So we're really excited about being able to help support our schools in that way.
All right,
Moving on to another amendment, but first a little bit of how we fund schools, in terms of renovation and maintenance. There's really, three options that we currently have. Well, one's kind of waiting for a 5-year timeline, Fund 46. We'll start with the one that created last spring in terms of, spring of 2024, that is, in terms of, long-term capital improvement fund, the Fund 46. That by law has a 5-year wait, before you can actually end up utilizing those dollars. But that was a recommendation from our long-range facilities plan. And then our two primary uses we use in the district today are a combination of Fund $10 and Fund 41. The board created Fund 41 back in 2008. For most of the years of the existence of 2008, the board's been levying about $5 million directly into Fund 41. It's a restricted fund. Levying the Fund 41, it can only be used for current and future capital expenditures. So the next slide, Jesse, this amendment would increase the Fund 41 levy from 5 million to 7 million, a 40% increase. From the long range facility plan, it kind of talks about, and I think it's important for the context, it talks about how much the board and the community has put into our facility in terms of renovation and improvements. Since the fund was created, we've levied almost $92 million into Fund 41. From the investments of 10 and 41 combined over the past 12 years, this was in our facility condition report, $173 million on custodial maintenance and facility improvements. You know, we have aging facilities that need to be continually updated and have working order. Some of those projects were roofing projects, secure entrances, increasing heating and HVAC. In addition to that $173 million, we spent same time frame $224 million in terms of reflective of our staff, our building services staff that are providing the custodial maintenance and improvements to our facilities. In total, almost $400 million done in the last 12 years in terms of our focus on investing in the facilities and maintaining our facilities as they continue to age. Just the context in terms of that balancing that we're going to have. The recommendation on the next slide, Jesse, is to provide that additional $2 million on the levy for a total of $7 million. The other thing that's nice about Fund 41 versus using the dollars straight out of Fund 10. Fund 41 allows us to manage our costs better on facilities. It allows us to amortize the costs over the length that we levy into Fund 41. It's a specific incentive under state law for districts to have maintenance and upkeep programs. That's important for our district because we're negatively aided, 90% supported on the property tax. So if we can do everything we can to manage our costs, to level our costs overall, things being equal, we'll do better under state aid. So Fund 41, if a district has the needs, and we do have the need for facility maintenance, it's a good idea to increase your levy directly in the Fund 41. I think our plan is to go through all the amendments and then I'll take questions at the end.
That sounds good.
So then the next set of amendments, Jennifer and Rachel are going to talk about some proposals regarding Board of Education compensation. I hand it off to Jennifer.
Thanks, Bob. So the slides that we have here are the compensation amendment, which also involves a change and an amendment to board policy to increase the stipend for the board members to $15,000 per year, and then additional compensation for the board president, the vice president, the instructional work group, and operational work group chairs. And that would be effective for the 25-26 fiscal year. Moving to the next slide. This is a review of slides that were presented at last operations work group, looking at the amounts that previously had been paid going back to 2007, and also including the supplemental pay for retreats that was based on hourly pay. The next slide is a comparison of the 5 largest districts in Wisconsin, board member costs or stipend and board president cost. We also did a comparison with the other Dane County school districts, Verona, Sun Prairie, Middleton, Cross Plains, Waunakee, and Madison. Since this slide was prepared, we have found out that Middleton, Cross Plains, the board president does make $12,000 at Middleton. I think that there are, oh, sorry, yeah, duplicate slides in there. And then we, again, this is a review from a previous operations work group, the nationwide comparison to capital cities around the nation. And also to government bodies in Dane County, a review of those salaries and stipends. And finally, the cost increase that it would be to our budget with the proposal as was stated in the amendment, with the additional amounts for operations and instructional work group chairs and additional amounts to the president and vice president, and increasing the base stipend to $. And then there was also a proposal to amend policy on retreat pay to a whole and half day amount, and the full day amount for the increased cost on, that's on the right hand side. And now I'll turn it over to Rachel to have the discussion about the insurance amendment.
Thanks, Jennifer. Good evening, everybody. So this involves a proposed motion that would make all Board of Education members eligible for MMSD healthcare with a required monthly contribution that is indexed to the percentage of premium paid by administrative employees of the district as defined by the handbook. We did take a broader vision of what was meant by healthcare here and assumed we were talking about health, dental, and vision. If that's just a little bit of background. I think some of this information is repetitive from last month, but currently board members are not eligible for either health, dental, or vision, as they're not considered district employees. The only school district we were able to identify in the state of Wisconsin that actually provides those 3 insurances is the Milwaukee. Next slide, thank you. This is an estimate of the annualized cost to provide health, dental, and vision. And you can see on the left-hand side there, that would be the district's cost. For health insurance, as we said, the school board members would pay about 12% of the premium, and so the district would contribute 94%. For dental, the district contributes 90%, and all employees pay 10% of the basic plan. So that was the assumption that was used here. And then for the vision plan, all employees pay 100% of that premium. So that was one of the assumptions we used here. The member cost, the board member cost is there on the right, based on some assumptions that we made. And those assumptions are on the next slide. So if we can go to the next slide. So again, we assumed 12% of the health premium would be paid by the board members, 10% of the dental premium would be paid for, and then 100% of the vision premium. We did assume that all 7 members would select the health family HMO plan. We also assumed all 7 would select the dental family plan. We were trying to be as conservative as possible in putting this estimate together. We did assume that 5 members would select the Quartz plan and 2 would select the Dean plan, and that's based on the approximate split that current employees choose between the 2 different carriers. And we assumed that the coverage would be effective October 1st. The numbers on the previous slide, those are an annual amount because that's what Bob needs for budgeting purposes. So it assumes a full 12-month cost. But actually what would be incurred, assuming this would be effective August or October 1st, would only be 9 months of coverage in this fiscal year.
Can I ask a question specific to family coverage and that assumption?
Yeah.
Thank you. What makes a board member or a member of our staff eligible for family coverage? Meaning I can't cover my niece, right?
Correct.
Like, so who qualifies and up to what point?
It's your spouse and your dependents up to age 26. And the district actually covers dependents through the year in which they turned.
Okay, so were we to have board members who do not have a spouse and do not have dependents up to the age, under the age of 26, they would have a different cost.
Correct. They would be eligible for a single plan. Again, in this case, assume the most conservative assumption here that everyone would choose a family plan, but the cost would be less if a board member either declined the coverage or selected a single plan.
And board members who need a single plan be available to them.
Yes. The next slide talks about all of the different assumptions that would go into this, and unless this is otherwise specified by the amendment, so. But it would start the first day of coverage following their start date, so. Again, if the board adopted this in September, I assume coverage would then start in October. Or for a new member, if they started in April, their coverage would begin in May. Everyone would have 30 days to sign up once they become eligible. They would only be able to make changes to their benefits selection if they have a qualifying event, either they get married or have a child, or during open enrollment. We assume that the premium payment would be deducted from their stipend check. Health, we take that deduction the month prior. For dental and vision, it's the month of the coverage. And then if the member vacates their seats, then the coverage would end at the end of the month. And that's how it works for employees right now. That answer your question? Next slide. So these were some considerations that we mentioned last time. Potential conflicts of interest, if we go down this road. Taxability, want to make sure everybody understands that. Since board members are not common law employees, the IRS would consider this a taxable benefit, whereas for our employees, premiums paid are pre-tax. And then again, we take this deduction for the premium payment from your stipend. Next slide. A couple of members asked for more information about the conflict of interest. This is a quote from a Wisconsin Ethics Commission opinion. I worked with legal counsel. They thought this was the one that was most analogous to the situation we're looking at here, mostly because it references the same Wisconsin statute that our board policy references. And this does say that an employee, whether it's retired or someone that's receiving health insurance paid for by, in this case, they're talking about the city council, should not participate in the consideration of the terms or award of such contracts. Also, if someone has a child that is receiving the city's healthcare coverage, and if they provide at least half the support, they should also not participate in the consideration of health insurance in that case. Again, this is talking about city council members, but our legal counsel thought that it would be applicable to the board, could be applicable to the board, given the reference to the same statutes. And then the last slide there, there was also a question that came up in the last meeting about COBRA continuation. So COBRA is the federal law that allows individuals that lose employer-sponsored coverage to continue it, even after they lose enrollment. We talked with our legal counsel. We also talked with M3's compliance individuals, and they thought there was a good case to be made that the board members would be a qualified beneficiary under COBRA. So if a board member did lose the coverage, they lost their seats or retired from the board, they could be eligible for COBRA. One thing to note is COBRA premiums, there's 18 months worth of coverage that they would be allowed, but those individuals do pay 100% of the premium. I think that's the last slide.
Right.
for me.
Thanks, Rachel. And before we do questions, this is just a summary slide that summarizes the amendments that total cost, potential increased costs, all funds, right? So this is a combination of Fund 10, Fund 41, and Fund 27 in terms of cost. This is the summary slide.
All right, Board Member Vandermeer and Board Member Pearson.
Yeah, yes, how much, can you find out how much a single plan would be with Quartz, please? And get it to me, please?
Yes. I can tell you right now, it's about $926 a month, so it's 12% of
Nine-
that.
12% of
I do the
nine,
math and get it to you.
got it.
All right, Board Member Pearson.
Yeah, thank you. I know that we did some considerable amount of like research in terms of like the actual like healthcare piece. Um I guess that well no, I think I know the answer to that. I was gonna just ask, I know like Milwaukee, when I was talking with Milwaukee, they have budgeted for their benefits like 87K. Assuming that all board members took their all 9 board members took their insurance, but I think the difference, and I'm just answering my own question right now, but the difference between us and them is that they are self-insured, and so they don't they have their own insurance from like MPS has their own insurance, but that's yeah. Because I was gonna ask like the difference in how we're kind of calculating this. Um, my question is around like the healthcare, if we are assuming that say all 7 members of the Board of Education takes on the insurance for healthcare, um, if we are to abstain from decisions regarding like the benefits and such, how does that actually occur if we are then having to make those decisions just for staff and everyone else? I guess that's the bigger question for me, assuming that we all take the insurance.
Ben, there.
Yep.
Hey, everybody. Ben Rubers, Associate General Counsel. I quite honestly, I don't have a good answer for that. I think that could be one of the reasons, like one of the previous slides said that there aren't any other districts in the state that do this. I think that could be one of the considerations is if everybody's conflicted out, I don't know who makes the decision at that point.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted just to ask that in conjunction with and I think part of like why Milwaukee is able to offer that is because they self-insure themselves. So it's like a different kind of conversation than us having to insure out and then for that. And I just wanted just to like make a comment about the increased board compensation. As the past couple months I've been um or since we've had this conversation in public, I have, kind of started logging some of my own hours about the work that visiting schools, the work that I'm answering emails, meeting with people, going to events and such. And I will say, like, it's definitely almost more than 10 hours a week. In addition to, you know, all of us having, for the most part, possibly having like a full-time job on top of that. So I just wanted just to make that, because I know that I've been hearing some folks like, why now, why this, why that? And I think there's a lot of work that is going to go into this job. And I think, making sure that we're kind of keeping up, and also, like I mentioned before, making sure that we're allowing other folks to also participate in ways that may not have considered because they just don't have the resources to be able to do something like this work. So I just wanted just to make that case of like, there is a lot of work that goes into these positions. And, you know, I don't think any of us come to this work expecting to make hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever. I think we really do care, but I do think compensating people is really important. So I just wanted just to make that caveat because I have taken on Serena Madison's like point of like, let me track what I actually do and how much time I actually put into it. And it kind of compelled me to do something similar. So I just wanted to make that and say that out there. But that's it for me for right now.
Thank you. Board Member Moser Feltham, then Board Member Saravo.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. Well, I guess I'll start with a comment, which is I'm super excited about all of these amendments. The full day 4K is so exciting. Just like nothing but excitement there. I have a question about the additional CC and SEA allocation, and it's not really, it's just like the workbook process is so opaque. And I know, Dr. Gothard, this is something that you've talked about a lot and have plans to address in future years. But I guess I'm kind of curious about the decision-making about, I'm curious about two things. I'm curious about like, what's the conversation like when you're saying, oh, such and such a person needs X number of hours to stay employed here? Like, what are the factors that go into that? Is that coming from the building leadership? Where does that come from?
Sure. So during each workbook process, there's a small number of FTE for typically our SCAs, occasionally a special education teacher that was temporary funding. So 1-year funding for specific purposes.
I see.
And so then if during the workbook process, a principal is advocating that staff member is very valuable to their service delivery and special education, and we want to keep them whole, then sometimes that process happens, or that conversation and process, the decisions are made basically during the workbook process.
I understand.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Something that I would be curious about, I guess I'll turn to Dr. Gothard for this one, in the future is understanding how many building leaders make that kind of request and how many then come as budget amendments, and like how we're making those decisions. It's not, I don't mean this right now, I mean as a future thought as I try and continue to get my head around the workbook process. And I know it's not just me. I know this is a question that like people who are interested in how our schools run generally are still trying to understand it. I see do you want to say
Are
something?
you thinking about special education only or all?
I'm thinking, I'm just sort of curious how those decisions are happening, how we're ensuring that those decisions are made fairly. And that's not a tonight question. That's something I'm just thinking about, and the opportunities for us to, because we were talking about it. So I want to appreciate Bob, you and your team for all of your intricate knowledge about which funds to go from and which funds to take from to make this all work. So thank you for that. And then with regard to the Board of Ed compensation questions, I continue to think that it's a good idea because it makes possible for more people to be interested in engaging in this way. Something that's stuck with me is a comment made by one of the consultants who's been working with us on the strategic framework about what is, in his opinion, unique about our board. And he says, often you see working with boards of education that the people who are on those boards are, no shade to these people, the guy who owns a car dealership in town. And that's not who we have on our board. And again, if you own a car dealership, please join us in our interest in taking care of our public schools. But I think that is special. I think that does, and that does matter whether or not we can say there's a stipend that can make it possible for you to take a day off from your day job to be able to attend to this work. And then with regard to the health insurance, as I've been thinking about this, the thing that keeps coming up for me, given the political climate that we're in, where like caring about the well-being of other people is like not hip anymore in some horrific turn of events. And I think about what it means for me to disagree with that, to say like, no, actually, when things are getting rougher and rougher and rougher around the edges of our like national political moment, I want to be leaning in and in and in on taking care of people who are in my community. And so for that reason, I'm really excited about that. And I'm excited to continue to work with that ethos as we shape next year's budget as well. That said, I know that there's been in our policy committee policy around whether or not MMSD will be able to fund family leave on the birth or adoption of a child for the future. And so as I think about being excited about saying, okay, what are our values as MMSD and how can we lean into that by making potentially school board members eligible for employee health insurance? I'm excited about, in my heart, what comes up around that. I'm feeling like, okay, this is the right direction to be going in when we think about how we operate in a political climate that asks us to turn our backs on each other. So that's not a question, that's just a comment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right, Board Member Saravo, then Board Member Nichols.
Thank you, Board Member Castro. I'm just gonna work my way down the slides too. I really liked expanding the 4K options. I really like that we have, because most oftentimes I'm just getting, 3K and, that being a half day, having a full day for 4K to really prep towards getting used to a full day in a school building, I think is really helpful for kids in a variety of ways, especially the kids that need extra supports, early on in life too. That was a big part of my daughter's start to education. I thought it was incredibly helpful. So I'm full on glad that we're doing that. Nancy, I want to thank you for highlighting the students that get to return to their home schools, because that is huge. I know there's a lot of work, hard decisions that get made when students are not there, and then getting back really needs to be redefined and celebrated and supported as that goes on. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. That in itself is a lot of work, and hoping to hear lots of good things at the end of the year, as much as hopefully a good start to the school year. And I think I love everything you said. Remember, I always said right. Those are welcome. Everything that you're highlighting about healthcare and everything like that. I'm also glad that Board Member Mulcher, you started having us have those conversations about the stipends and whatnot, because I really think it should be some sort of rolling topic at some point instead of waiting for someone to have to bring it up just because the district changes. It's always growing. So the amount of work that's at the table is something that's always growing. So if we're looking at like what changed over time, technology, expansion, the amount of students that are here, there's just a lot going on. And maybe that's a lot for the community. So I mean, there's a lot to take in, but as someone who on here knowing like what does it look like to be an advocate in the community and what is the work on a board for the district look like, those are two different things. So I'm really appreciative of the work that goes on behind the scenes, and I know there's a lot of it. So thank you. That's all I wanted to share.
Thank you. All right, Board Chair Nichols, then Board Member Steiner Mueller.
Thank you, Chair Castro. Thanks to the team for all of the work you've put into get the budget amendments in. I do have a couple of just clarifying questions. So for the 4K expansion, did that already occur? Okay, so that's what I thought. I thought there was a lot of excitement as we started the year with 4K already expanding. So this is going into the final budget, but we've already done it. So I don't think anybody is going to vote against this amendment, but I guess I do want to pose a question, why didn't this amendment get baked in to the budget for the June preliminary vote, and why is it coming to us now when we've already implemented it?
Great questions. So technically, if the board chooses not to approve the 7FT in dollars, it would come from the 20 unallocated pool approved as part of the June preliminary budget. So this is really an add to the June budget, but if the board chooses not to put the resources here, we would take it from the 20 unallocated the board's already approved it.
Right. That wasn't really my question, but thank you, Bob. I think what I was asking is I know Colleen really well, and I know how thoughtful she is about 4K and all the community sites. And it seems like this idea of expansion probably was ready to come to us at the June budget vote. So it's really more of a timing and sequence. And I'm sorry if I'm putting anybody on the spot. I'm just curious because most amendments oftentimes at this point haven't been fully implemented yet. So
President Nichols and board members, I'll share with you. There's a few reasons. Number one, I believe wholeheartedly in early education. So let's say that number one.
Yeah.
We have need. There are children that want to be enrolled. Number two. Number three, Colleen and her team and our educators are amazing. And yeah, definitely the reason for this expansion. But the driving force in this is that we do not have an enrollment strategy in our school district. And we've worked for a year to create some understanding around it. And now it's time to implement some of those changes. So I agree, this is coming to perhaps a little bit differently. We're doing it, and now we're going to change the final revision. In the future, we will make decisions that are looking ahead of the future so that it can be part of the June preliminary budget. We were not there this year. And that's this is not me blaming anyone on our team. I have responsibility for this.
Yeah.
But we need to be more thoughtful about our enrollment. Our 4K and kindergarten enrollment is a really important indicator for us to set our trajectory for MSD.
Okay, great. So it sounds like there was an opportunity as we ended last year over the summer and coming into this year to really go ahead and add the expanded sites and the full day programs. And so we went forward with that, and to make it formal, we're bringing it forward as an actual amendment.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Just I thought we had already done this. I just wanted to make sure. On the next amendment related to Fund 41. So I know right now in our budget, we have been allocating $5 million a year for ongoing maintenance, and that's in our Fund 41. If I'm understanding this amendment, we're adding the 2 million to make that $7 million a year.
Correct.
Okay. And at one point, some months ago, Scott, you came forward and you shared this new database dashboard that the custodians, the building services team were working really hard to like categorize and do inventory on all the things that needed to be kind of repaired and fixed across our buildings. And I was geeking out on how like amazing that was gonna be. And again, this is not to put you on the spot, but I think what I'm wondering is, given the increase of the 2 million, do we feel like we're in a good enough place to know exactly what we would go use the 2 million on? Like we already have identified building maintenance projects and are ready to rock and roll with the additional 2 million.
Yeah, so Bob and I have been working very closely with trying to design what that future looks like.
Okay.
We've got some projects slated, so even secure buffered entrances, roofing updates that we have to do, some plumbing, electrical at some of our failing schools. We've already identified a list of objects that we would go and attack in the first year.
Okay.
If we continue the long range facility plan, those get further and further identified using the asset management system.
Yeah, the asset.
Those continue to build as we go, but those are already hitters that we've already identified to move forward. And that's part of that is how much capacity can we do the work with? So we've got the capacity for $7 million now as we continue to build our, as get our trades aligned. We'll look and see what those future numbers might look like, but 7 million is just kind of like the number this year that we feel is pretty firm and having the ability to get done and improve our schools, not just maintain.
Got it. Thank you for that. And Bob, are you thinking that, or I'm not exactly sure who put this amendment in, but if we were to vote affirmatively on this and it increases to 7 million, then that would be our new annual amount. We're not thinking it's like a one-time amendment based on a kind of a good budget year. You're saying this would kind of become our new base level for annual building maintenance?
That would be the intention, but obviously every year the board can decide how much they choose to let any of the funds.
Okay. Okay.
But to permanently increase the money set aside for facility renovation.
Great, thank you so much. To the HR team, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have any questions about the special education services one, so Dr. Molfenter, please don't think that I'm ignoring you. To the HR team, regarding the board, the board compensation, particularly the health insurance. And this may be a little bit more procedural in terms of my question, but it is gonna help me understand a couple things. So one is, if a board member is elected in April, they get sworn in later that month, then part of their onboarding into being a board member would be, you are, let's just say you're eligible for health, dental, and vision. Let's just say that's board members are eligible. If a board member says, no, thank you, I'm currently covered through my own employer, I don't want to give that up, they wouldn't take it. So then when we move forward to this potential ethical consideration or conflict of interest around making decisions and voting on future health insurance decisions, there could be board members who have elected not to take the district's health insurance, and there would be others who would. Would it be incumbent on the board members who took the health insurance to state that they have the health insurance before entering into a dialogue about the district's health insurance? Or I know that's a very procedural question, but I guess I'm trying to, given the slide about the conflict of interest, I'm just wondering. So I saw Ben come on, and I know I directed at the HR team, but I saw Ben come on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, the considerations that I had thought about really had more to do with voting and recusing oneself from any vote having to do with a health insurance plan that the member is participating in. I had not considered what part of the discussion they could be, to what extent they could participate in a discussion leading up to that vote. So yeah, I apologize. I don't think I have a good answer for you as we sit here right now, but it is something that I could look into.
Okay, because the reason I wanted to follow up on that is, and I appreciate the assumptions that you all were holding, that all 7 members, but I don't know that that would be true in all cases. And so I want to leave some room that not all board members, even if eligible, may elect to take the health insurance. And I think another question that I have is, because we are on 3-year terms, but health insurance and open enrollment usually occurs every year. You could be a board member who elected not to take it 1 year. Maybe something happens in your life and now you need it. And could you then, during the next open enrollment, say, actually, my life circumstances have changed dramatically and I actually need access to health insurance in another year or a different year?
So there would be two opportunities. So,
Okay.
yes, open enrollment, you can change for whatever.
Okay.
Change your mind. You could also switch plans. If you chose Dean, you could switch to courts or whatever.
Okay.
Also, again, assuming this is treated the same way as eligible employees, if you had a qualifying life event, which is the kind of federal term for it, you could also say add your insurance at that time. And qualifying life events include a lot of different things, but it could be that, let's say you lost your other coverage, you changed jobs or were no longer eligible wherever you had it before. Say you had it through your spouse and they lost their coverage. That would be a qualifying life event. You get married and you want to add a spouse, but there are a number of different qualifying life events, and then you would be eligible at that time also. So it's either open enrollment or qualifying life.
Okay, okay, great. And the taxability part, so would board members be getting, if this were to pass, like some kind of a monthly statement that showed like what their stipend amount was, what their premium amount was deducted from the stipend, and then can you just explain the taxability part?
So Jennifer's probably more the expert on this than I am, but you'd get your paycheck stub. And right now for employees, the benefits that are paid on their behalf show up in the pre-tax column. So for board members, it would show up in the post-tax column. Also, I expect the only time they'd know about it is on the W-2 where it would show their total taxable wages.
There would probably be imputed income on your paycheck showing you what the taxability of the insurance premiums would be. So you should be receiving each month a pay stub showing your monthly stipend. And so all of the premiums, the stipend, the taxability would show on that document each month, as well as your W-2, as Rachel said.
Okay, but is that assuming that it's on the board member to manage that? The taxability?
No, it would be on us and it would be reported to you.
Okay.
And then when you filed your taxes, it would be between you and your, tax accountant or TurboTax to report that.
Okay. Thank you for that. Well, generally, I would say I appreciate the thoughtfulness of the team for gathering this information and for our fellow board member for getting all of the language in here around compensation. And I do think that there's lots of opportunities to help sustain board membership and to help, board members or prospective board members in the future for really considering taking on the role. The health insurance component, I think I want to think about more, particularly based on Ben's comments. I mean, we do have big decisions to make on behalf of the employees of this district, so I just would want to think, I guess maybe do some follow-up questions regarding this potential conflict of interest when we're making big decisions, especially given the fact that we're going to be going out to RFP very soon for new providers. One thing, Bob, that you have not heard yet, but I do want to just mention this, and I've spoken with a couple of fellow board members about this, not get it in writing is that one of the things that we have tried to encourage on the board is board members also taking time to invest in their own professional learning as board members. And so I wanted to put forth an amendment that kind of codified more access to opportunities to attend conferences or board specific professional learning. I did ask Jesse to gather some costs of that. And so I do have a dollar amount that I can put in writing. But I think in this case, the amendment would be so that board members can feel like they can attend a national school board conference or an in-state conference. And that there's a dollar amount available each year. And if a board member is not able to take advantage of it, they kind of either use it or lose it that year. But I wanted to put that forward, and I feel like it's kind of related to compensation and ways that we engage on the board. So I just wanted to name that, and I'll actually draft the email now and share it.
Okay.
Chair Castro.
Thank you. Board Member Vandermill and then Board Member Mulgrew.
Yes, I'd like a formal legal memo describing exactly on health insurance, what we could participate in, what we can't participate in, whether administration would take over the role of choosing insurance for the employees. Additionally, how it would affect the ability for each and individual board member to vote on it. And that is in regards to health insurance. In regards to the special ed amendment, I have to say, thank goodness. For years, we have not always had CC teachers who were made whole and SEAs that were made whole. I think this is a huge step. I think that the other amendments look good. I just need the legal analysis because that on the health insurance. On the stipend, I'm for it. I've decided that I need to make sure that other people other than me with disabilities are able to be on this board. Just because I may not use it does not mean I have the right to decide that for future board members. And it is for that reason I am choosing to vote for it. Thank you. And I have to unfortunately leave the meeting now because I have a root canal tomorrow at 7 a.m. and I have to take medication. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good luck.
Thank
Board
you.
Member-
Thank you so much, Chair Castro. I greatly appreciate the work that we're doing on full day 4K. I want to thank my fellow board members for their leadership over the course of years, particularly highlighting the leadership of you, Chair Castro, in advocating for full day 4K. I think the ability to expand to 5 days is profoundly important. As a parent of a 4-year-old right now, I think like being able to have just a realistic conversation about the childcare component of 4K and working with that age group really benefits families and families like mine. So thank you all for doing that work. I am a little concerned about the kind of conflation of our full day 4K program and Head Start, because Head Start has historically been federally funded. And so my nervousness is, as we are seeing potential cuts to funding related to Head Start, and real disruption at the Department of Education, that I don't want us positioned to absorb those costs and take responsibility for what is a very, very large program that helps low-income communities and is tremendously important, but also has some real implications. And so talk to me a little bit about our 4K program, our full day 4K program that's going 4 days a week and that we're expanding, and what distinguishes that program from Head Start.
So there are, at Head Start specifically, they have Head Start programs, and then they have their MMSE programs, and then they have childcare wraparound programs. So like Head Start does a lot of different components. They don't just do the federal funding or or the MMSD. So like they have a lot of different components that they have. So the students that are enrolled in the MMSD portion, that funding comes from MMSD portion of 4K, and it supports those classrooms that do that. They do multi-age classrooms, but they're only funded the MMSD portion for those students that are 4 by September 1st that are also eligibly enrolled in our district. And so sometimes they have a combined funding within some of those classrooms.
I want to kind of hone in on this question and get really into the nuance of it. Were a child to see a portion of that funding defunded through the federal government, how does that impact our programmatic capacity in relationship to that? And I'm sorry if that's not worded well.
Yeah, the 4K portion is completely funded by 4K. The other portions of other students would be funded through Head Start funds. So how they work those programs, we work in collaboration with them, but they have different streams of funding that are working in order to provide the whole program. But different components of it, if dollars would go away, different components of the program would go away as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
This is
but it would just be dependent upon where the funds are specifically coming from, because they do lots of different components for that.
This is something I want to keep my eye on in terms of who is eligible for Head Start over the course of the next few years. What funding cuts to Head Start mean for the families that we serve, and how that impacts 4K in any possible direction, particularly if there are aspects of this conversation I haven't considered in terms of, are we sharing staff and a part of someone's salary is coming out of both of those buckets and is no longer sustainable, were one of those buckets to change significantly. I'm really grateful for this work and the leadership that's gone into it, and I look forward to voting in this amendment. I would have a really hard time voting to increase the Board of Education stipend if we hadn't, over the course of the last half a decade, made very significant investments in our staff, including $5 increases for our hourly staff, which, you know, for certain employees or certain employer units meant up to 31% increase, giving some of the largest cost of living adjustments in the history of this organization. I think what we as a board have done is prioritize investing in people. And I think I greatly appreciate and respect the 6 other people who serve on this board with me. And I think that this is an appropriate investment in their contribution to this organization. And I do think it's interesting to look at the districts across the state of Wisconsin and to look at the state of education in Wisconsin and to be really critical about how we are creating environments in which all kinds of people can lead and lead successfully. I already have the conflict of interest that is our health insurance, and I have a series of other conflict of interest, including when we vote for, I'm going to use Roots and Wings as an example. I don't usually vote to accept donations from Roots and Wings. I work for an organization that is significantly supported by that organization. That was true for me and another board member. And we would abstain from those votes. I have voted on healthcare because it has been pretty clear that my vote doesn't benefit me or my family specifically. I am married to an educator. I'm married to somebody who, you know, makes $73,000, has worked for us for 10 years and has a master's degree in education and speaks multiple languages. And I have abstained from votes that I think are really specific to that individual while taking into consideration the implications for our larger system. So whether or not I'm voting in a way that is going to impact 6,000 other employees in really significant ways. I think that this is a really nuanced conversation. I think people's healthcare is tremendously important, but I do think in order for board members to serve effectively, they have to be able to show up. They have to be well enough to be at the table. They have to be able to address their own health needs, the health needs of their families. And I think that we have the ability to take care of one another. together in this way, and we should. And I don't think all board members will have to navigate a conflict of interest. And I think how board members navigate that conflict of interest is something we really need to think about expansively. I think, you know, what it looks like to disclose which of us is opting into this healthcare and which of us is not, or which of us has what kinds of conflicts of interest. I think that's a greater conversation that goes beyond just the implications of this amendment. I did want to ask, in relationship to the board retreats, originally, when I had worked on this amendment to the budget, the retreats were part of the amendment itself. Reading the version that we saw tonight, are they still included in terms of the value of a board member's time in participating in the retreats?
They are. So I actually work with Petra on that one. And so there are some things that we would need to consider. So it's in there, but we also wanted to make sure that we reference the board policy 1550 that would need to be adjusted to take into account the retreats. And then there's just some things we need to consider far as in the 1550, it talks about 2 to 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours, and 4 to 5 hours. There are just some options that Petra has worked on to state what that looks like, either including a retreat to look like that or creating a subset within that policy that specifically calls out the retreats and just give it a dollar amount that's proposed here. So there's just a number of different options of what that can look like.
Okay, so what I'm hearing though, Dr. McCray, is that we wouldn't necessarily, by voting on this amendment, be voting on that portion of the amendment.
Correct. That would need to come after the vote on the amendment first, because Bob needs this in order to build out the budget. Then we would then go into doing the work to address it in the policy.
Okay, and I just want to distinguish that because the lump sum we were given kind of put those things together and they've been separated. And so we would want to kind of adjust expectations realistically. I don't think it's a significant amount either way. But I do want to make sure we're circling back to that conversation about the retreats and what it means to really update just kind of the value of the board's labor in relationship to those spaces specifically.
Yep.
I am going to vote in favor of the board being eligible for healthcare, and I am also going to vote in favor of the increased stipend for the board. And I respect, you know, board members' decisions to vote in the ways that make the most sense to them. I am hoping that we are voting on this at the regular board meeting at the end of this month. So at our next meeting. Are we voting on all of these amendments, the 4K amendment and the other amendments presented this evening at our regular meeting at the end of September?
Yes.
All right. I look forward to that vote. I also look forward to the opportunity to vote on professional development as it relates to the board and that investment. And I thank you very much, Board President Nichols, for bringing attention to that. That's it for my questions this evening.
All right, thank you so much. I just have some brief comments. Superintendent Gothard, thank you for taking up the mantle on expanding 4K and improving our services throughout the district. It's been one of the most fulfilling aspects of this job is helping contribute to that effort. So thank you for taking that up and really, yeah. And then I could not agree more with Board Member Pearson and Board Member Mosner-Feltham's comments regarding board member pay. You know, when we do add up the hours between the school visits, the meetings, talking to parents, students, our board meetings, and the prep that goes into it, it really is a lot of labor, labor of love most nights, but it really is. And ultimately, I don't view this as a decision for ourselves, but future boards. It's no surprise that school boards, or no secret that school boards in America are typically structured for older, whiter, wealthier folks. And that's just not the reflection of students and families that we serve in this district. So ultimately, I hope that by doing this, it makes this job more accessible to the folks that look like students and families of the district. So thank you. All right, and now moving on to the last item,
Thank you. This will be short.
Mr. Bob.
So also at the September board meeting, you will have an amendment to approve the short-term borrowing for the TRAN that we do every year in September. Spent a lot of time over this past summer taking a look at our cash flow, our expenditures. We work with our partners. That dollar amount, it's $55 million is what we're recommending, is what we need. Again, to pay our bills before the property tax happen, the big one in January. And then later in August also. So it ranges for the last several years, it's ranged between $50 and $60 million. And again, that 55 million is just contingent on increasing expenditures and when our revenues are timed to be received. So we borrow the money and we pay it off following August. So this is literally a direct consequence of us being 90% contingent on property tax revenues and not state aid, right? Because state aids are given at different times of the year. Some of it's front loaded in the fiscal year. Property taxes are not shared until January, and then following August at the end of the school year. So this is merely the money we need to operate, pay our bill first several months of the school.
Just to put additional punctuation on, state aids, this year is projected to be 40 hour short term more than we received in state aids, just which I think is alarming as well.
Okay. Any questions from board members on this? Seeing none, may I please get a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Board member Lee, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
It's 8 o'clock.